tonight, we're heading straight into the frozen December nights of Texas. Nights where the wind sounds different, the roads feel emptier, and the shadows stay longer than they should. From silent farm routes to snow-covered county roads where people vanished without a trace. Get ready for 4 true Texas winter horror stories that prove December in Texas isn't just cold, it's dangerous. But before we begin, there's something most viewers get wrong. Most people leave without subscribing, and by doing that, they miss the darkest, most chilling stories reserved only for the bravest. Don't make that mistake. Hit subscribe right now, because tonight is only the beginning. And tell me, where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Drop it in the comments, because here, the night is only getting started. And the horror is already waiting in the snow. So now, let's dive into the darkness. I do not take FM 1092 home after late shifts anymore. My name's Wade Ellison. I'm from Hungerford, Texas, and I work as a night stalker at the big grocery warehouse off 59, the one with the busted loading dock light that nobody ever fixes. I am saying that right at the start because I want you to understand I am a regular man. I am not trying to sound smart. I went to work that day like any other. I had eggs and toast for breakfast, the cheap white bread that falls apart in your hands. And I drank my coffee out of the blue mug my sister gave me that says Best Uncle on it. Even though I do not think I am that good at it. I put on the same gray work pants I always wear, and that dark green long-sleeve shirt that has a grease stain on the cuff from when I dropped a pallet jack handle 2 weeks before. I remember that stain because I caught myself rubbing it in the car while I was at a red light, just pressing my thumb over it again and again. I clocked in that afternoon at 2:58, a little early, because I like to stand by the vending machine and talk to the guys before the shift starts. It was a Thursday in December, one of those days where the cold does not look bad through the window, but as soon as you step out, the air cuts through your clothes. I remember the time because I looked at the little punch clock screen and it said 1458, and I thought about how my granddad would have hated the 24-hour thing. He always said time should roll over. That is the kind of stupid thought you remember when everything goes sideways later. During the shift, everything was normal. I loaded canned goods, water cases, bags of rice. I scanned barcodes until the numbers blurred. The fluorescent lights buzzed like they always do, and the floor manager, Terry, yelled at us about stacking too high, like he always does. They had Christmas music playing low over the speakers. That is another thing that sticks in my head. Some old recording of a choir that sounded worn out. I had a ham sandwich on my first break, and a Dr. Pepper that was a little warm because the machine is never set right. I texted my sister around 8:30 and told her I could not do Friday tacos because they had me on another late shift. She sent back a thumbs up and a little sad face. I remember that because I looked at that sad face later and my hand started shaking so hard I dropped my phone. I am getting ahead of myself. I am trying not to, but my mind keeps jumping. The whole night was regular until it was not. The first off thing was stupid. Around 10, there was a loud pop, like a pallet wrap snapping, and all of us looked up. Nothing fell. Nobody yelled. There was just this tiny circle of dark on the far wall way up by the ceiling where the light had gone out. One bulb in a line of humming white, and then this dead little circle. No big deal. We kept working. I felt the cold in the loading bay every time the overhead doors opened and closed. I clocked out at 12:17 in the morning. I remember staring at that number too, 12:17. Not 12:15, not 12:20, 12:17. I pulled my jacket on, the thick brown one with the torn pocket lining, and I walked out to the parking lot. You know that feeling when you step out of a loud place and the cold air hits you and everything sounds different? There was no wind, just that still, hard cold. You could see your breath, but it did not twist around. It just came out and went straight up like thin smoke. My truck was where I left it. Old white Chevy, with one blue door from a junkyard swap. I hit the unlock button twice because it sticks, tossed my lunchbox on the passenger side, and sat there for a second with my hands on the wheel. I always sit for a moment and check my phone before I pull out. Just a habit. There were no messages. I remember that too. No missed calls. No texts. Just the time at the top of the screen. 1222. I turned the radio on low, local country station, and pulled out. Normally I take 59 straight and then cut across down 60. But for the last few months I have been taking FM 1092 part of the way when I am coming back late. It feels faster even though my sister says it is not. It is darker, that is for sure. But you cut past some of the mess near the bigger exits. That night, I did what I always do. I turned on my headlights, let the truck warm up as I hit the main road, and then headed for the turnoff. That is important. There were no clouds, no fog. The stars looked like somebody had thrown salt across a black table. The moon was just a thin piece, low and weak. The first stretch was nothing, just highway signs, other cars, the glow of Wharton sliding past behind me when I checked the mirrors. I felt tired, but just normal tired. My neck hurt a little from lifting. My hands smelled like cardboard and metal. I remember thinking about what I was going to cook the next day. Chili, maybe. Something warm. I turned on to FM 1092 like always. That is when things started to feel different. But it was not anything big at first. That road at that time is mostly empty. No big businesses. Just a couple of dark driveways leading off to houses you cannot really see. Some wire fences. A busted billboard with no ad in it. Just a blank white rectangle leaning over the ditch. My headlights showed the usual stuff. Reflectors in the center line. A little shine on the metal fence posts. Then, the radio cut for a second. It was a song. Then nothing but soft static for maybe one breath. Then the music came back right in the middle of another song. It was like someone had cut the sound and then turned it back on. I remember saying out loud, "Come on," because I thought the radio was going to die, and I really do not like driving in silence that late. My breath fogged the windshield a little because I had the heat turned up. I wiped a circle with my glove and kept going. I saw the first light about 5-6 minutes down, past a little stand of trees that lean in over the ditch. It was not bright like a headlight. It was pale, like the color of freezer light when you open the door at night. It was floating above the tree line on the right side, not high like a star, low, just barely higher than the tops of the tallest branches. At first, I thought it was a plane way off in the distance, but it was too close and too still. I drove another few seconds waiting for it to move, but it stayed right there, like it was pinned to that patch of trees. I told myself it was maybe something from one of the properties out there, some ranch light, somebody with a weird security lamp. I did not slow down. I kept my speed around 65. Then I realized it was moving, not up or down. I came dot, not toward me. It was moving with me. Every little curve in the road, that light matched it, staying in the same spot off to the side, same distance from my truck, like it was on a rail. I tried not to look, but of course I kept checking. Left side was just my dashboard glow and the faint red from the radio screen. Right side, through the passenger window, behind the black shapes of the trees, that pale blue thing kept pace. I gripped the wheel harder. I remember my palms starting to sweat even though the truck was still cold. I reached over to turn the radio up a bit, like that would help, and my fingers brushed that little St. Christopher medal my sister hung on the rear view, and I muttered, "Stay with me, big man." I do not even know why I said it. I am not that religious. I just did not like the silence between the songs and the hum of the tires. I tried talking to myself, normal stuff. Like, okay, Wade. It is nothing. It is just something on someone's land. Keep driving. You need to get home. You got leftovers in the fridge. When I said that, the light flickered. It had been steady the whole time until then. It did not blink like a plane. It shivered. Quick, like somebody had turned a dimmer down half a notch and back up. I stared over hard, then really looked at it. It was not attached to a pole. I could see the line of the trees under it, black sticks against the faint sky. And this thing was just hanging above them, round but not sharp at the edges, more like a soft ball of glow. No beam, no spill, just a circle of pale blue. I said, "What is that?" And it did it again, like it was answering. Small flicker, on and back. I swear to God, that is exactly when the tapping started. It was on the roof of the cab, just above my head but a little toward the passenger side. Light, like someone drumming two fingers. Not fast, not slow. Just tap, tap, pause, tap. The whole truck did not shake. It was not like something heavy landed on me. That is part of why it scared me so bad. If something hits you hard, you react, you swerve, you duck. This was small and careful. I froze. I did not slam the brakes. I did not speed up. My foot just stayed right where it was on the gas. I remember my heel digging into the mat. The tapping kept going, 3 or 4 more times. I could hear it over the radio. Real sound, not inside my head. I turned the radio down just to make sure, and it got even clearer. It sounded like finger bones knocking on sheet metal. I thought for 1 second that maybe some branch from an overhanging tree had caught. But there was nothing above the road. Just open air and those short leaning trees to the right. I reached up with my right hand, fingers spread, and touched the headliner from inside, right where the sound was. It felt normal. Just rough fabric over the metal frame. No vibration. My hand started to shake. I pulled it back down and gripped the wheel again. I said out loud, "Who is up there?" My voice cracked. As soon as I finished the sentence, the light out by the trees pulsed again, stronger this time, like it swelled a little, and then shrank. The tapping stopped. I do not know why this next part scares me more than when the voice came later, but it does. For about 10 seconds, there was nothing, just the whine of the engine, the hiss of the road, the low hum of the air through the vents. Then whatever it was on the roof dragged its hand, or whatever it had. You know the sound of something being pulled across metal, that groaning scrape. This was like that, but soft, controlled. It went right over me, down the middle, stopped above the back window, then silence again. The blue light was still there, keeping pace, like it was watching how I reacted. I did not pray. I did not scream. I just started talking. I think my brain decided if I could keep sound going that was mine, then I would be okay. I said, "Listen, I am just trying to get home. I worked all day. I am tired. I have not done anything to anybody. I just want to go home." My words tripped. I repeated some. I think I said home 4 or 5 times in a row. The light pulsed. Twice this time. Like, yes. Like it heard me. I pushed my foot down on the gas without meaning to. I saw the speedometer needle jump to 70. The road here is long and straight. No houses for a bit. Just that blank field on the left and the tree line on the right. The truck felt small. I could see my own face faint in the windshield reflection. Eyes wide, jaw tight. I tried to call somebody. My hand went for my phone in the cup holder. It was not there. I always put my phone in the cup holder. It had been there when I left the parking lot. I saw the screen light up when I checked the time. Now it was not. I glanced down by my leg, by the passenger side, up on the dash. Nothing. I did not want to start digging around while doing 70 on a dark road. The idea of bending down and then something being there when I sat back up made my stomach flip. I left it. I said, "Whoever you are not getting in this truck." I probably sounded crazy. My voice was high and thin. As soon as I said that, the temperature in the cab dropped. I am not being dramatic. I had the heat on. My hands were starting to feel almost hot on the wheel. In the space of a breath, it went from that to the kind of cold you get when you open a walk-in freezer and step inside. My breath turned thick and white right in front of my face. The windshield started to bloom with fog around the edges. The vents were still blowing, but they might as well have been pulling air in from outside. I reached down and smacked the heater controls. No change. My teeth started to chatter. I bit down to stop it because I did not want whatever it was to hear it and like it. That sounds stupid now, but that is what I thought. Then the radio went again. The music died mid-word, and there was that same soft static. Not loud, just a hiss like a faraway shower. I was about to smack the dashboard like that would help, and then under the static, I heard my own voice. Not talking now, talking from before. I heard myself say, "Listen, I am just trying to get home." It was exact. Same crack in the word listen, same catch on home. They played it back. Whatever was riding that road with me, it had taken what I said and now it was feeding it back through my radio in this flat, quiet way. Then another line I had not said yet came through, in the same voice that was mine, but not. It said, "I have not done anything to anybody, Wade. Hearing your own name said in your own voice, but not from your mouth, is wrong in a way I do not know how to describe right." My hands locked on the wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. I did not answer. I would like to say I stayed strong and ignored it, but I did not. I whispered, "That is not funny." The light pulsed again. Then my voice from the radio said, "It is not funny," and then started to laugh. Each breath of it was stretched, like the person was learning how to do it as they went. The tapping returned, not above me this time, but on the back window, behind my head. Not fingers now. Knuckles. 1, 2, 3. Then pause. 1, 2. I thought about hitting the brakes and just letting whatever was behind me hit the truck and slide off, but I did not know if there was something with weight or nothing at all. I could not picture the right kind of impact. That scared me as much as the idea of seeing something in the mirror. I did not want to look back. That road has those little reflector posts at the side every now and then. I watched them whip by. 1, 2, 3, 4. I tried to count to steady myself. The radio clicked. The static cut off clean, like a switch. The music did not come back. There was nothing. No fan noise, no engine sound. I realized then that I could not hear my tires on the road anymore. My foot was still on the gas. The speedometer still said 70. But it was quiet inside that cab in a way cars are not. Even parked with the engine off, you hear ticks and creaks. This was a box of dead air. I felt my tongue in my mouth, felt my heart in my neck. I said, "What do you want?" I did not shout it. It came out small. The light outside swelled. It got bigger. Not brighter exactly, just like something had stepped closer carrying it. It was not above the trees anymore. It was at the level of the cab windows now, out there over the ditch, matching my speed. I could see more of it. It was not really a ball. It had shape, but it kept changing like the edges did not know where to stop. It pulsed again. And when it did, something inside my head hummed. You know the feeling when a big truck goes past and your chest buzzes for a second. It was like that, but inside my skull. Then the truck lurched. Not like I hit a pothole. It was like the road dropped and then came back under me. I grabbed the wheel, easier said than done because my fingers had gone numb. I checked the dash. The fuel gauge was lower than it should have been. That sounds small, but that is what told me something was really wrong with how time was moving. I had filled up that morning. The needle had been almost full when I left the warehouse lot. I had gone maybe 15 miles. Now it was already nudging under 3/4. I said no, 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 without even meaning to. The light out the side pulsed, then slowly eased farther out from the road, like it was giving me space. The sound came next. Not the tapping. Something in the trees. It started as a rustling, like wind through branches, but there was no wind. It was layered, not one animal, not many of the same animal. It was like a mix of footsteps, dry leaves, and something dragging. You know when you drag a shovel through gravel. There was a hint of that in there. It never got nearer or farther. It just ran alongside me in that tree line, keeping pace under that pale glow. I stared hard at the road because some part of me knew if I looked into that dark between the trunks, I would see shapes that did not belong to anything from here. I told myself it had to end at some point. FM 1092 hits the turn where the little gas station shows up on the left if you keep going long enough. The one with the broken ice machine and the faded beer posters. If I could see that sign, it would break whatever was happening. I focused on the thought of that sign like a lifeline. Just the same stretch of two-lane blacktop unrolling in front of me, the same 3 reflectors at the side, then a gap, then another 3. I glanced at the clock on the dash. It said 1240. That could be right. The trip should have taken 15, 20 minutes by then. But my gut said more time had passed. My legs ached like I had been sitting forever. My jaw hurt from clenching. I said, "How long have I been out here?" And my voice on the radio, quiet and thin, answered back, "Too long." I slammed the power button on the radio so hard my fingertip hurt. The screen went black. The voice cut off. The silence came back, heavy. The tapping hit the roof again. One good hit like a hand slapping metal hard, then stopped. The right side light pulled ahead a little, then slowed until it was perfectly beside me again, like we were 2 cars cruising together. I realized then that I could not see any other vehicles. None coming the other way. None behind me. That road is not busy at that hour, but it is not dead. There is always one guy too tired, one truck too late. That night, there was nothing. No red taillights far ahead, no oncoming beams, just black. My headlights, that pale blue thing. I felt so small in that moment, like the cab had shrunk and I had grown, or the other way. My body did not fit right in the seat. The wheel felt too close. I started talking again, this time just to keep from crying. I said my full name. I said my sister's name. I said the name of every street between the warehouse and my house. I listed what I had eaten that day. Eggs and toast, ham sandwich, vending machine chips. I said the last 3 digits of my social without thinking and then got mad at myself for giving anything real away. Like that mattered to whatever this was. The blue light pulsed weaker, then stronger. It was reacting. That is the part I need you to hear. This was not some dead thing floating in the air. The radio was off, but the sound came from in front of me, around the steering column. No speaker should be there. The truck has nothing there that makes sound except maybe the little ding when you leave the lights on. But this was full voice. Mine. It said, "Eggs and toast. Man. Sad little breakfast." The way it hit that last part, "sad little breakfast," made my throat close. It sounded like I was mocking myself. I do not talk like that. I snapped, "Shut up," and my voice came out rough and loud. The thing repeated it, "Shut up," but slower, tasting the words. Then it started in with something that broke whatever little bit of grip I had left. "Wednesday you stayed home and lied about why." It went back as far as last week. Little private pieces of nothing that no one would remember but me. It even said the line my supervisor had thrown at me when I came in late last month. It pulled those words out of wherever they sit when you try not to think about them. I was not seeing anything besides the road at that point. But I could feel the cab getting tighter, like the roof was sinking. The cold had a weight. Every breath felt like I was pulling air through a wet wool rag. I wanted to roll the window down to feel something normal, like real December air. But I was terrified that if I did, something would put its hand through. The light outside surged. It moved closer until I could not see the tree line between us. All I saw out that side was blue. Not bright enough to hurt, just there. The sound in the trees went quiet. That made it worse. The nothing after constant noise. The voice, my voice, stopped listing things and went quiet too. For maybe 20 seconds there were no sounds. I think I held my breath. Then, clear as if someone was sitting in the passenger seat, I heard myself say, "Turn your lights off." That was it. No please, no threat. Just that instruction. Turn your lights off. I shook my head so hard my neck popped. I said, "I am not doing that." I must have looked crazy, arguing with air, but I did not care. I kept my hands locked and my eyes on the road. The gauge lights flickered, like something was draining off the power. The blue outside did not flicker. It was steady. It did not need my truck to shine. I thought about how dark that stretch gets when you kill the lights. You cannot see the bar ditch. You cannot see where the asphalt ends and the grass starts. I pictured myself hitting a culvert and flipping, bones breaking, glass, and under all that, something waiting in that ditch with its hands open. I did not turn them off. I pressed the little stalk forward instead, so the brights came on. My beams hit the road so hard the reflectors exploded with light. For 1 second I thought I had beat it because my own light cut through some of the weird. Then I saw that the road ahead was not right. FM 1092 has a few curves. You get to know them every night. The way a certain mailbox shows up, the way a certain group of trees leans. None of that was there. The brights showed me a straight shot into black. No sign. No gas station 2 miles ahead glow. Just the white lines and the reflectors repeating. I had the worst thought then. Maybe I was not on FM 1092 anymore. Maybe I had been taken somewhere else that just looked like it at the edges. I jerked the wheel a tiny bit left and right, just to see if the truck would push against any ruts it knew. It did not. It was like I was floating on smooth glass. The voice came again, quieter now, like it was losing interest. It said, "You are going to get home, Wade. You are just not going to like the way." The worst part was the way it sounded tired of me. Like it had already played this game before with other people, and I was just another round. I started to cry then. Not loud, just tears running down without me noticing until they hit my chin. I kept wiping my face with the back of my hand and then grabbing the wheel again, back and forth, stupid little motions to stay in control. I said, "What are you?" and I did not get an answer. The light outside started to move. Not forward or back. Up. It rose slowly above the cab level, heading back to where it had been at the start. The sound in the trees came back, but different. Slower. Like whatever had been pacing me was getting farther away. The air in the truck warmed a little. Not all the way, just enough that my breath stopped puffing white. The hum in my head eased. I realized I could hear my tires again. The low roar of rubber on road. The gauge lights steadied. The radio stayed dead. I did not touch it. I just kept driving. Then, like someone lifting a curtain, I saw the green glow of the gas station sign ahead. Not all at once. It came in from the edges of the windshield, bleeding into the black. The numbers on the price board were clear as day. All of it where it should have been. I think I laughed. It came out more like a bark. The wheel jerked in my hands a little when I did. I straightened out and kept going. As I drew even with the gas station, I looked to the right where the trees break and you can see the fields. There was nothing. No blue light. No glow behind the tree line. Just December dark. The time said 3:07. That is not possible. The drive from the warehouse to that gas station, even going under the limit, should not take that long, even if you get stuck behind a tractor or something. My gas gauge was sitting just under half a tank. I had lost fuel I could not have burned. I pulled over right after the station, where there is a little dirt patch trucks sometimes sit on to nap. I could not make myself stop under the actual lights of the pumps. That felt too exposed, like something might see me better from above. I threw it in park and just sat there. The engine idled like nothing had happened. Little tick of the belts, faint smell of exhaust. Normal. My hands finally let go of the wheel, and I realized my fingers were cramped into claws. I opened them slow. My phone was in my lap. That is something I still do not understand. I swear to you I had not put it there. I tried to dial my sister, but my fingers shook too much. I kept hitting the wrong contact. I ended the call twice before it went through. When she answered, she sounded half asleep and mad. She said, "Wade, what is wrong with you? It is 3 in the morning." I tried to answer, and nothing came out at first. Then I just started talking too fast, like I am doing now. She kept saying, "Slow down. Slow down. You are scaring me." I could not even tell the story right. I just said light and voice and road over and over until she finally said, "You are not making sense. Just come home, please." I promised her I would, and I did. Somehow, I pulled back onto the road, stayed under the speed limit, and took every turn like it might try to flip me. Nothing else happened. No more light, no more voice, no more tapping. But I could feel something in the back of the cab with me all the way. Like the air did not move right. Like a third person was breathing very soft behind the seat. At one point, I reached back with my right hand and slapped the fabric just to prove there was nothing there. My fingers hit upholstery in empty space. The feeling did not go away. When I pulled into my little dirt driveway by the trailer, the first thing I did was look up. The sky was still clear, stars still there. No glow. The trailer porch light was burned out like it has been for months. I sat there with the engine running and the headlights shining straight into the side of the house for maybe 10 minutes. I did not want to open the door. I had this picture in my head of that blue light being right outside, pressed up against the glass, and as soon as I cracked it, it would pour in around me like water. Eventually, the gas gauge nudged lower and I got mad at myself for wasting it. Old country habits. I turned the truck off. As soon as the engine died and the fan wound down, the silence hit again. Real silence this time. No pressure in it, just regular night sounds. I heard a dog bark somewhere way back, a train horn far off, the buzz of a pole transformer. That normal stuff almost broke me. I opened the door, climbed down, and walked fast to the trailer, keys already in my hand, eyes on the ground. I thought, if I do not look at the sky, it cannot show me anything. I just stood there in the dark listening for anything that was not mine. I could hear the fridge kick on, the little rattle it makes, the clock in the kitchen ticking, the wind finally starting to move outside. No tapping on the walls, no voice. I exhaled so hard, my chest hurt. I should have gone to bed then, but I could not make myself go down the hallway toward the bedroom. That part of the trailer felt too far from the front door. Instead, I sat down at the small kitchen table, pulled my cracked phone out, and hit record. That is what you are hearing if you are listening to this. I did not think about making a story for anybody. I just needed to get it out of my head in a straight line at least once. It has been 3 weeks now. I have called in sick twice because they tried to put me on the late shift again, and I do not want to be anywhere near that road past midnight. When I do have to go in evenings, I take the longer way. I stick to the bigger highway, even if that means more traffic and more lights. My boss is asking questions. He thinks I started drinking again. I have not. I am scared if I drink, my brain will slip a little and that thing will find an opening. I have new habits now. I check the roof of my truck before I get in, run my hand across it like an idiot, feeling for dents or prints. I turn the radio off as soon as anything sounds a little off. I will sit in silence for an hour rather than let some song cut suddenly and open that door again. At home, I keep the blinds shut on the side that faces the empty field. I used to like looking out at the stars. Not anymore. I cannot look at blue Christmas lights either. The people 3 trailers down put some up on their porch, and the first night they turned them on, I had to go in my bathroom and throw up. The sound that gets me most, though, is tapping. Every little knock. When the ice maker drops a chunk in the tray, when a twig hits the window, when the neighbor kid bounces a ball against the steps, my whole body jumps. My sister came over last Sunday and knocked like she always does. She looked at me strange when I opened up. I could see her eyes go straight to the dark circles under mine. She asked if I was sleeping. I told her no. I have tried. The problem is that when I do drift off, I hear my own voice in that flat tone, saying things I do not want anyone to hear. little useless secrets. Things I regret. It strings them together into sentences that do not fit. I wake up with my chest tight and my hands clenched. Once I woke up standing in the kitchen with my truck keys in my hand, like I was about to go for a drive without knowing why. That scared me worse than the light. If I go back on that road in my sleep, I do not know what they will try to make me do. I say they now, because I am sure it was not just one thing. The voice used mine, but there were other sounds under it, other breaths. When the static hit, sometimes I could hear words layered under the main one, like many people whispering in a big empty room. I cannot make out what they said. I think that is on purpose. If I could understand it, it might stick louder. There is one more thing I need to tell you. I almost left it out because it makes me feel crazy in a different way, but leaving it out would be a lie. 2 days after that night, I noticed a stain on my green work shirt. Not the grease one on the cuff, a new one, on the shoulder. At first I thought it was oil, but it does not look like oil. It is a pale ring, like something wet sat there and dried. I tried to wash it out twice. It did not move. The fabric feels different there, a little stiff, but not crunchy. Sometimes when I put the shirt on, that spot feels cold against my skin, even if the shirt has been in the warm laundry basket. I did not lean on anything at work that night. I did not carry any boxes on my shoulder. The only thing above that part of me was the roof of the truck, and whatever rode it. I know what you are thinking. Take the road in the daytime. See if anything looks strange. Prove to yourself it is just a stretch of asphalt. Maybe some weird power line thing or swamp gas or whatever people say. I tried. I got as far as the turnoff one afternoon. Sun bright, traffic normal. As soon as I saw the FM 1092 sign, my hands went slick on the wheel, and I felt that pressure in my head starting up again. Very faint, like something waking up. I drove right past. I took the long way around. I am not going back. Call me a coward if you want. I am telling you, I know when I am outmatched. Whatever runs along that tree line at night is not interested in people who know how to fight. It wants people who are tired, who are just trying to get home. It listens. It learns. It really likes the sound of a man begging in his own voice. This is the proof that it changed me. I keep my radio off even during the day now. I drive in silence to work, and in that silence I sometimes hear, very soft under the noise of my own thoughts, a recording start. It always starts in the same place, my voice saying, then a little chuckle that does not belong to me, then the sound of tapping. I will be on some other road in broad daylight and my fingers will start to move like I am feeling that roof again. I do not know if it will ever stop. So, yeah, my name is Wade. I am from a little place most people just pass on the way to somewhere else. I stock shelves and load pallets. I live in a trailer with a roof that leaks when the rain hits just right. There is nothing special about me. That is what scares me most. If it can find me on an ordinary December night on some half-forgotten farm to Market Road, it can find anybody. So if you ever get off a late shift, anywhere near where the fields start, and the houses spread out and you feel tired and think, I will just take the quiet road. It will be faster. Listen to me. Do not. Stay where the street lights are. Stay where you can see taillights. And if you are ever already out there and you see a pale blue light over the trees keeping pace with you, do not talk. Do not whisper. Do not say your name. Do not give it anything to play back. Keep your mouth shut. Keep your hands on the wheel and pray in your head only, because once it learns your voice, it does not forget, and you will hear yourself for the rest of your life, whether you like it or not. My name's Hannah Cole. I'm from a little place outside Slayton, Texas, and I work as a stalker at the Dollar Saver off Highway 84. And I need you to listen to me for a minute, man, because I swear to God I am not making any of this up, and I don't talk like this. I don't tell stories. I go to work, I come home, I pack school lunches and fall asleep in front of the TV. That's it. So if I'm sitting out here behind my house at 3 in the morning, talking into my phone, It's because I can't keep this in my head anymore. It's like it's pushing against my skull, and maybe if I say it all out loud, it'll sit still for a while. I don't know, but I have to start at the boring part, or it won't make sense. That's what I keep thinking. It has to start with how normal that week was. How normal that whole day was, because that's the part that still gets me. How there was nothing special about it at all. Just cold and boring and regular. I remember waking up because the cheap little alarm clock on my nightstand said 5:17 and I smacked it too hard and knocked my glasses behind the table again. And I was already annoyed before my feet even hit the floor. You know that feeling. You're tired of the day before it starts. I pulled on that faded blue hoodie from the feed store, the one with the cracked logo on the front, and the little grease stain near the pocket from when my sister's truck started leaking. And I put on the same black leggings with the pilling on the thighs and the same thick socks because the cold had come in fast that week. Like somebody left a door open over the whole county. And I remember thinking, please let the pipes not be frozen. Please just give me coffee. I padded into the kitchen and the linoleum was so cold it felt wet, like stepping on metal. And I started the coffee and cracked 2 eggs in the same pan I always use. And my little boy, Eli, he wandered in rubbing his eyes, hair all sticking up, and asked if school was canceled. And I laughed and told him no. This is Texas, not the North Pole. Throw your jeans on. And he groaned and went to brush his teeth. I remember all of that so clearly, the way the cheap overhead light hummed, the way the little window over the sink had that thin white crust of frost at the corners, the way my breath showed just faint when I leaned in close to look at the outside thermometer I'd taped crooked to the glass last winter. It said 22, which for us feels like the end of the world. I made Eli toast with too much peanut butter because we were almost out of jelly, and he got a smear on his cheek, and I wiped it off with my thumb and told him he had to take the trash out after school. And he said, "Yes, ma'am," in that automatic kid way, and I poured my coffee into the chipped mug with the Christmas trees on it, even though it was still early December. And everything, I'm telling you, everything was plain and stupid and normal. I even remember the little stupid notification on my phone from the store manager saying, "Don't forget to sign the new schedule." That's how boring it was. I'm not skipping anything important. There was nothing important right then. I walked Eli out to the end of the drive to wait for the bus like I always do. The gravel crunching under my boots, and our breaths making little clouds, and that's the first time I saw them. And I didn't understand what I was looking at. Not really. Not in a way that made my body react. You know how your brain will just file something under weird and move on? That's what happened. I saw the prints in the dirt along the fence line, just outside the part where my dogs usually run, and I remember thinking, I guess someone's been walking around out here. But the bus was coming and Eli was talking about some math test, and I didn't stop to go over and look. I just noticed that they were long, like grown-up long, and for some reason they looked wrong to me, the shape of them. But the bus headlights washed everything out, and he climbed on and waved at me through the glass, and I turned around and went back toward the house, hugging my mug to my chest. That's when it stuck in my head enough that I walked down along the fence instead of going straight to the porch. The sky was that flat, pale gray that makes everything feel like it's under a bowl, and the air smelled like dust and metal. It always does out here in winter. I sipped my coffee and walked over, and I swear to God, to you, dude, they were barefoot. Somebody's bare feet, heel and ball and all 5 toes clear as day, pressed into the frozen dirt, one after another, going parallel to the fence, not crossing it, just pacing the length of my property, each step about as far as mine would be, maybe a little longer. And that was the first wrong thing. But I told myself the first easy story you tell yourself when you don't want to be scared, right? I thought, okay, maybe one of the neighbor's boys dared each other. Maybe they were drinking something. Kids do stupid stuff. Maybe they came out after dark, even though my closest neighbor is half a mile down and I don't even know their kids' names. I followed the line of prints down toward the back corner of the property, blowing into my hands, feeling my coffee cooling in my mug. But the prints didn't go to any of the gates. They just kept going until they turned, neat and clean, and started to curve around the back of the house, still on the outside of the fence, like someone was circling me. That's the word that came into my head, but I pushed it away. Circling, like a dog that doesn't want to come in. I went all the way toward the back and then stopped because my toes were going numb, and I told myself I was being stupid, that the cold makes your brain dramatic. And anyway, the prints probably went off toward the road, and I just couldn't see the rest. I went back inside, turned on the little space heater under the kitchen table, and thought about it just long enough to send a text to my sister saying, "Someone took the polar plunge past my place last night. Barefoot prints. Crazy." And she sent back a laughing face and said, "Country boys, girl." And that was it. That was the whole first thing. It should have just been one weird morning story. But then I noticed it again the next day, and the next. And each morning the feeling in my chest got a little tighter, like when you notice a smell you can't explain. At first it's just interesting, and then it starts to bother you because it doesn't go away. The second morning, I took my coffee out on purpose to look. The sun hadn't fully come up yet, just that stripe of pink over the flat land. And the frost had crusted over the dirt, so the prints were even clearer than before, like somebody had pressed a warm hand into ice. The edges were sharp, and they were new. I know they were new because I'd watched the wind all day the day before. Those little dust devils running across the cotton stubble. Anything in that dirt from the night before would have been softened. But these looked fresh, like whatever made them had just gone by. And this time, they didn't stay out by the fence. They curved in closer. They came right up to the corner where the goat pen starts, and then they traced along the backside of the barn. Slow and steady, each one the same distance from the last, like a metronome. And my goats, they were packed inside the barn instead of milling around like they usually do when they hear me. They were all pushed together, eyes wide, not making a sound, not their usual yelling for feed. My dog, Rusty, he wouldn't even come out of his little house. He just stuck his nose out and then backed up, his nails scrabbling on the wood. I laughed, like out loud, this weird little laugh that sounded fake even to me. And I said, "Okay, whoever you are, the joke's over," like the air was going to answer me. I walked along the inside of the fence line this time, glove fingers curled around the top wire, tracking the prints as they went, and they did the same thing as the day before. They circled all the way around the property, from the roadside, past the barn, past the back, past the little stand of mesquite trees, then back up toward the front, and then they just stopped, right there at the front left corner, like the person had vanished. I looked for where they crossed the fence, for a break or a scuff or some sign someone had climbed. But there was nothing. The ground was clean on both sides, except for my own boot prints and those bare feet on the outside. I told myself something even dumber then. I told myself maybe the wind had just erased the rest, that I wasn't looking in the right place, that there was a gap in the barbed wire I'd forgotten about. But it was getting harder to swallow those excuses. You know that feeling when you're trying to swallow something too big and it hurts all the way down? That's how the thoughts felt. I went to work, stocked shelves, broke down cardboard, and the whole time there was this picture in my head of those prints following my little rectangle of land all the way around, like a track, like someone pacing a cage. The third morning is when the lights started acting strange, and that's when it stopped being just weird and started being wrong, like really wrong. The kind of wrong that crawls up your spine even if nothing is happening right in front of you. The night before that third morning, I remember sitting on the couch with Eli. He was watching some cartoon, and I was half asleep on my phone, the space heater humming. and I heard the little click from the back porch. The motion light snapping on, that sound you get used to when you live out here. And I didn't even look up at first. I just assumed it was a raccoon, or the wind, or Rusty wandering. I heard Rusty bark once, sharp, then that low growl he does, and then he went quiet. I figured he'd lost interest, but then the light clicked off faster than it should have. Usually it stays on a good 30 seconds or more. This was like 10, maybe? It went on, then off. Then it clicked on again, like someone was playing with the switch on the wall instead of walking past the sensor. On, off, on, off. Not fast, just wrong. Too short, too exact. I muted the TV and sat up, listening. The house felt like it had leaned to one side. That's the only way I can describe it. Like all the air shifted weight. Stay here, I told Eli, and I went to the kitchen, flipped the porch light on through the glass, and looked out. But I couldn't see anything except the edge of the barn and the silhouette of Rusty's house, and that bright pool from the motion light coming on and dying. Like it was breathing slow. I told myself the sensor was going bad, added it to the mental list of things I couldn't afford to fix, and I went to bed later than I meant to, too tired to go check it physically. I dreamed in that shallow way, where you feel half awake, and I remember rolling over sometime in the night because I felt like somebody had walked past the bedroom window. You know how you can feel that, even if you don't hear it, like a shadow moving across your skin. But when I opened my eyes, there was just the thin strip of the nightlight under the door and the red numbers on the clock, 2:41, and then I must have fallen back asleep. The next morning I bundled up and went outside with my coffee before Eli was even fully dressed, because now I needed to see. I stepped onto the porch and the air hit my face like a slap. The boards under my boots were hard and slick, and the yard looked a little whiter than usual. This thin skin of frost over everything. And there they were. Again, the same bare prints, only this time they were closer. Not way out by the fence to start, they began right at the corner of the house, at the edge of my porch steps, like something had stood there during the night, right in front of my front door, then turned and walked along the base of the wall, not the fence, like it was tracing the house itself. Step by slow step, the toes pointing inward toward my rooms, toward where I sleep, and all the little hairs on my arms went up under my hoodie. I followed them. Of course I did, because what else do you do? Pretend they aren't there. They went along the siding, past the little bedroom window, around the corner to the kitchen side, behind the propane tank, around the back bathroom window. And when I came around to the goat pen, I stopped so fast I almost slipped, because I could hear them inside, my goats, stomping and shifting but not bleeding, making this low constant noise like they were trying not to yell. When goats are scared, they let you know, but this sounded like they were scared and trying to stay quiet. The bare prints never came closer than a foot to the fence. Always the same neat distance, never crossing, never breaking stride, but every few steps there was this little scuff mark, like whoever it was had dragged their toes just a tiny bit, like they were testing the ground or tapping a rhythm. I swallowed and it hurt. I tried to call out, "Hello," really loud, which is a stupid thing to say, but that's what came out. My voice sounded thin in the cold, and my breath hung in front of me, and then disappeared. Nobody answered. Of course. I kept following, all the way around, and again, just like before, they circled back toward the front and stopped. Not at the fence, but at the porch. The last two prints pointed straight at the steps, like something had stood there looking up at my door. I checked the padlock on the gate out of habit. Even though the prints were on the outside, the chain was still wrapped the way I'd left it, frost over the metal. I checked the windows, looked for scratches, looked for anything. But there was nothing. Just the prints. And Rusty pressed all the way inside his doghouse. I could just see his eyes, big and white. He didn't even wag his tail when I said his name. That's when the thought really formed in words in my head. Why are they barefoot? That was the thing that hooked in and didn't let go. It wasn't kids goofing off anymore. It wasn't some drunk neighbor. Nobody walks around out here barefoot when it's that cold. You get frostbite. You slip. You just don't. And there were no other prints mixed in. No boot tracks. No tire marks. No nothing. Like this person appeared at the edge of my property with no vehicle and left the same way. I went to work again, because what else was I supposed to do? Call the sheriff and say I had weird prints in my yard. I imagined the look they'd give me, the way they'd drive by once, see nothing, and forget about it, so I stocked shelves again and tried not to think about it, but I was clumsy all day, dropping things, zoning out in the middle of conversations. My boss asked if I was sick, and I just said I was tired. That night, I made a decision that I still don't know if I regret or not. I decided I was going to catch whoever it was, not in some hero way, just in the way that you need proof, so you know you're not losing your mind. I don't have security cameras or anything fancy, but I do have my phone. I propped it up in the kitchen window facing the yard, screen dimmed, recording on, plugged into the outlet so it wouldn't die, pointed right at the area where the motion light shines on the back of the house and the start of the barn. I told myself that if it was a person, I'd at least get some shadow, some movement, something, and if it was nothing, then I could tell myself the wind and the frost were playing tricks on me. Read him a story about a dog that goes to space, kissed his forehead, and every creak of the house sounded a little too loud. I double-checked the locks, something I'd never been obsessive about before, and I left the kitchen light off so the glass wouldn't just show my own reflection. Then, I lay down, fully dressed, and listened, my heart beating in my ears. Sometime after midnight, just when I felt like I was finally drifting, I heard that click again, the motion light. Then another, like it was turning on and off, deliberate. Not the random flicker of a bad bulb, and my chest tightened so much I thought I was going to swallow my own heartbeat. I stayed in bed for a full minute, frozen, arguing with myself. One part saying, "Go look," the other part saying, "Stay, pretend you didn't hear it. Pretend this isn't happening," but the part that needed to know won. I slid out of bed as quietly as I could, careful not to wake Eli, and padded into the kitchen. The tile was like ice under my socks. The house was dark except for that pulsing light from outside. It painted the cabinets in long stripes. On, off, on, off. I stepped up to the window and stayed just to the side at first, like you see in movies, my hand on the frame. I leaned just enough to see into the yard, and there was nothing there. Just the barn, the goat pen, the fence, and the air itself. My dog was not in his house. That's another thing that stuck out. The little wooden box was empty. No nose, no eyes, just nothing. And the light kept snapping on, then off, with no movement, no branches waving, no animal. I watched for a long time. I don't know how long. Long enough that my legs started to shake, and eventually the pattern changed. The light stayed on, just once, and then died like it was supposed to, and the yard went dark. I waited, counted to 100 in my head, and when nothing else happened, I told myself that had to be the end of it for the night. I checked the phone. It was still recording, the little red dot blinking, and I thought, okay, at least I'll have something to look at tomorrow. I went back to bed, and this time I did sleep, but it was the kind of sleep where you feel like you're pinned under something, like your brain is still awake even if your eyes are closed. The next morning, I didn't even make coffee first. I went straight to the back door, phone in my hand, my breath little puffs in the cold kitchen, and I opened it. And I swear to you, listen to me, I swear to you, The first thing I thought was that someone had been standing there until just a second ago, because the air felt, I don't know, pressed, like when somebody has just left a room and you can still smell their deodorant. Only there was no smell, just that feeling. The boards of the porch were white with frost, and right there, pointed at the door, were two brand new prints, deeper than any I'd seen, heel to toe, toes right up against the threshold, like they'd been almost touching the door. The rest of the yard was stitched with the same circle, the same careful path, but these last two, they were right where I was standing, like something had been on my side of the wood last night. I swallowed hard enough to hurt and stepped out just enough to look down. The prints were detailed, every toe perfectly rounded, the ball of the foot slightly wider, and they were wet looking, even though everything else was dry and icy, like the skin that made them had been warm. You know how you can see that difference when a warm hand touches cold glass? It leaves that clear smear. That's how it looked. The boards underneath a little darker where the frost had melted. My stomach turned. I checked the yard with my eyes as fast as I could. Rusty was back in his house, but instead of sleeping with his head on his paws like normal, he was all the way to the back, pressed into the corner, eyes on me, shaking a little. When I called his name, he whined but didn't come out. And my goats were inside again, crowded to one side of the barn away from the wall nearest the house. They were breathing hard. You could see little clouds when they exhaled, but they weren't calling out. Just standing there like they were waiting for something. I backed into the kitchen slowly and shut the door, heart banging against my ribs. I remember my hand shaking so bad I had to try twice to lock the deadbolt, which was stupid. It's not like a lock on a wooden door is going to stop anything that can appear and vanish in the frost. But we do what makes us feel less helpless, right? I downed a cup of coffee without tasting it and sat at the table with my phone. I thumbed over to the video from the night before and hit play. I braced myself to see something, a shadow, a shape, I don't know. But what I got was almost worse. The footage was there, the timestamp steady, and for a long stretch it was just my dark yard, the soft wash of the motion light when Rusty first went out, him sniffing, walking around, then going into his house, normal. And the seconds ticking by, nothing, nothing, nothing. Then, around the time I remembered waking a little, the light snapped on in the video. But there was nothing moving at the edge, nothing crossing the frame. The sensor just triggered on emptiness, and then off and on again, off again, the way I'd seen with my own eyes, and every time, the yard was just empty. I dragged the little progress bar with my finger, going frame by frame, squinting, looking for any hint, and there was nothing. No distortion, no glitch, just light and dark. Was that sometimes, right before the light cut off, the picture would fuzz for a half second. Not static, not a glitch, just this almost imperceptible shimmer, like heat waves on asphalt. But it was freezing. There shouldn't have been any heat. I told myself again and again that there had to be a reasonable explanation. I said those words out loud. There has to be a reasonable explanation just to hear them. But they sounded thin in that little kitchen. That same day, after I dropped Eli at school, I caved and called the sheriff's office. I told whoever answered that someone might be trespassing, that I kept finding footprints around my fence. And I left out the barefoot part because it sounded crazy. A deputy came by in the afternoon. Big guy with a red nose from the cold. He walked the perimeter with me, hands in his jacket pockets, saying, "Huh?" And I see. But by then the sun had been up for hours and the ground was half mud, half frost, all messed up. My prints, the goats, the dog, and whatever had been there all mixed until it was just churned earth. You couldn't see the neat circle anymore. I told him about the motion light going weird, and he nodded and said, "Those sensors go bad all the time." "Ma'am, maybe get you a new one when you can." And when I mentioned the prints on the porch that morning, he looked at the boards, which by then had mostly dried and only held the faintest smudge, and he gave me this look like he wanted to be kind, like he was thinking, "She's alone out here. She's scared. I get it." He asked if I had any trouble with my ex, any reason to think someone might want to bother me, and I felt my face go hot. I told him no, my ex is 3 counties over, and more scared of responsibility than anything else. The deputy said he'd drive by a few extra times at night for a bit, and that was it. He left me with a little wave and a "call if you see anything solid." Anything solid. That phrase stuck in my head, like what I had already wasn't solid enough. That night I didn't bother with the phone camera. It hadn't helped. I just locked up and pulled the curtains shut tight and left the TV on in the living room with the sound low. Little flicker under my bedroom door, like a guard. I lay there in my hoodie, staring at the ceiling, listening to the heater cycle on and off and Eli's soft breathing through the wall. And every time I was about to slip under, I'd jolt awake like I'd fallen, heart racing. At some point, I must have actually slept, because when the thing that happened next happened, it felt like walking straight out of a dream into something worse. I remember hearing Rusty first, not barking, but this weird high whine, like a kettle left on the stove. And then a sound I couldn't place at first. This slow, dull thump. Pause. Thump. Pause. Like somebody walking in heavy boots on the porch, only it didn't match the weight. It was off somehow. I looked at the clock, read numbers, 3-8, and my throat went dry. My first thought was, the deputy didn't really drive by. My second thought was, I don't want them to see what I'm going to see. I slid out of bed again, legs shaky, the house colder than it should have been for the heater setting, and I could hear that noise clearer now from the hallway. Not loud, just wrong, like the sound was coming through water. I don't know how else to say it. Thump. Pause. Thump. Like someone pacing slowly from one side of the porch to the other. I put my hand on Eli's doorknob, almost went in there to scoop him up and bring him with me, then stopped. Because some part of me thought, if there is something out there, I'd rather it only knows about me, not him. I went to the front door this time, not the kitchen, because that's where the sound was strongest. The porch is right on the other side of it, maybe 3 steps wide. I pressed my ear to the wood and held my breath, and I could hear it clear through the boards. That same slow step. Step, then nothing, then another, but there was no accompanying creak like there should have been. No shift in the structure, just a sound. Like boots on linoleum. Recorded and played back. Wrong for wood. I don't know why I did what I did next. I could have just stayed there, frozen, waiting until it stopped. But standing there like that made me feel more helpless than anything. So I slid the chain lock off as quietly as I could, fingers fumbling, and I wrapped my hand around the knob. It felt cold, not just from the house, but like something on the other side was drawing heat through the metal. My breath was coming too fast, and in my head I kept repeating, "It's nobody, it's nothing. You're going to open this door and see an empty porch, and you're going to feel stupid. Just open it. Just do it. Like a dare." I twisted and pulled the door toward me just a few inches, and the sound stopped. Completely. Mid-step. Like someone lifted their foot and froze. The outside air slid in, sharp and dry, and for a split second, I swore I felt another breath meet mine, like 2 temperatures mixing. I opened the door wider, enough to see the porch boards and the yard beyond, and there was nothing. Nothing standing there, nobody on the steps. The yard lay flat and white under the moonlight. The barn hulking in the distance. The old mesquite looking like a hand on the horizon. Rusty's house, a dark little triangle. and it was so quiet that my own heartbeat sounded too loud. I stepped forward, 1 foot onto the porch, and the wood didn't creak. It just thudded soft under my weight, and that's when I looked down and saw them, the prints, and not from earlier, not melted, not vague, but fresh. So fresh I swear I could see tiny beads of thawed frost still forming at the edges. A line of them coming from the far edge of the porch toward me, toward the door, each one perfectly centered in the width of the boards, toes pointed straight at the threshold. And they stopped exactly where I was standing, exactly where my own boots ended. Like they had walked right up to me, nose to nose, if there had been a nose. And then, on the right side of the frame, about halfway up, on the vertical wood itself, there was one more, not flat on the floor, but sideways, pressed into the door frame, keel on the trim, toes curling slightly around the edge. A full, clear footprint in frost on a part of the door that no human foot should be able to stand on, because there is nothing to stand on there. It was like someone had put their bare foot against the frame and pushed gently, as if testing it. There was no smudge of a hand, no other prints showing how they got that high, just that single impression, toes and all, white against the darker paint. The breath in my throat turned to ice. My knees went loose, and for a second I thought I was going to fall forward into it. My brain did this stupid little flip-flop, trying to explain it. Maybe a kid stood on something. Maybe it's just a trick of the frost. Maybe it's... But there was nothing for anyone to stand on, and no way to make that shape except by pressing a warm foot onto freezing wood. I took one big stumbling step backward and slammed the door with more force than I meant to. The sound echoed in the house, and Eli called out from his room, groggy, "Mom?" And I almost didn't answer because my throat wasn't working. Finally, I managed, "It's okay, baby. Go back to sleep." In this thin little voice that didn't sound like mine, I slid the deadbolt, put the chain back on with fingers that didn't feel like they belonged to me, and then I did something I'm not proud of. I dragged the heavy dresser from the hallway and wedged it in front of the door, even though I knew in my bones if whatever made those prints wanted in. That cheap dresser and that cheap lock and my little body behind it wouldn't stop it for a second. But it made me feel like I was doing something. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat at the kitchen table with all the lights on, drinking cup after cup of coffee until my heart jittered, listening for any sound. But there was nothing, not even the heater, like the house was holding its breath with me. When the sky finally started to lighten, that pale gray coming in around the curtains, I checked on Eli again. He was sprawled sideways across the bed, mouth open, snoring a little, completely untouched by any of it. Thank God. I left the dresser where it was and went out the back door instead, because I had to see if those prints were still there or if they'd vanish. You know, like maybe they were just some half-awake hallucination. But when I stepped out onto the back steps, the cold hit me even harder. And the yard looked the same as always after one of these nights, only worse. The circle deeper in some places, the line of prints clearer, like whatever it was getting bolder or closer. And when I went around to the front, walking along the side of the house, with my hands jammed into my pockets so I wouldn't see them shaking, there they were, exactly where I'd left them a few hours before, the path coming up to the porch, the 2 prints at the threshold, and that impossible one on the frame. Only now, as the air warmed just enough, little rivulets of melted frost were running down from the toes, making it look like the foot was crying. I don't know why that's the thought that hit me, but it did. My boots making little crunch noises, and I went back inside and called the school to say my boy was sick. We weren't coming in. Then I called into work and said the same thing about myself. The manager sounded annoyed, but she said, "Okay, feel better," and I hung up and realized my hands were still shaking around the phone. That whole day I tried to act normal for Eli. We watched movies. We baked cookies from the cheap refrigerated dough I keep for emergencies, but every time he laughed, My mind went back to those prints, circling the house, pressing up against the wall by his bedroom, standing right at my door. The next few nights blur together when I think about them now. They feel like one long stretched out night. Even though I know days passed in between, the prints didn't show up every single morning after that, but enough, like whatever it was, didn't need to come consistently, just often enough to remind me it was still out there. On the nights in between, I'd still hear little things. That wrong creak, that too soft thud, the motion light flickering, sometimes staying off when it should have come on, sometimes clicking on and holding for minutes with nothing in the yard but frozen dirt and empty fence. The animals got worse too. Rusty stopped barking at all. No warning, no nothing, just silence. Sometimes I'd find him in the barn with the goats instead of his house, like he was choosing their company over his usual routine. And the goats, they took to sleeping all piled on top of each other in the farthest corner. Their eyes on the door, I'd stand there with my lantern and see the whites around their pupils and my stomach would twist. Calling my sister and asking if we could squeeze into her spare room in town. But then I'd picture trying to explain why, trying to make words for something that didn't leave evidence you could put your hand on, and I'd freeze, same as I did at the door. And besides, the house is all I have. It was my grandparents' place, the only thing left in my name. Where was I going to go that was really safer if I didn't understand what I was trying to outrun? It all came to a head, like everything does, one night a few days before Christmas, when the cold was at its worst, that brittle kind that makes every sound sharper. I remember because Eli had one of those classroom gift exchanges coming up, and I'd stopped in town to buy a cheap little puzzle and some candy on sale, and I'd come home tired and a little proud of myself for stretching the last of my paycheck. The sky that evening was clear, 1,000,000 pinprick stars, the kind of beauty that people put on postcards, but all I could think when I looked up was how small the house felt under all that empty. I put Eli to bed early. He'd been yawning since dinner, and I stayed up later than I meant to, wrapping that little gift at the kitchen table. The heater clicked off around 11, and the quiet rushed in. Thick. I almost turned the TV back on just to have noise, but something in me didn't want to cover up the sounds of the house. Like I wanted warning if anything changed. So I just sat there, listening to the hum of the fridge and my own breathing. Eventually, I turned off the lights and went to bed. And for a while, nothing. Just the wind against the windows and the faint sound of a semi far off on the highway. I must have dozed, because when I heard the first sound, it came in like it was part of a dream at first. This low scraping, then that same slow step. I sat upright so fast my head spun. The red numbers on the clock said 2:59. My heart felt like it was trying to punch its way out, and I realized what was different this time before I even fully woke up. The little glimmer stripes weren't showing under the door. Whatever was making that sound was walking in the dark, either outside without triggering it, or inside. I couldn't tell which was worse. The noise came again, from the direction of the living room first, then the hallway, not fast, not stomping, just patient, like whoever it was had all the time in the world. I slipped out of bed and my bare feet hit that cold floor, and I almost cried from the shock. I grabbed the first thing I could find, which was the heavy flashlight from the dresser, and I held it like a bat, which again, I know, like that was going to do anything, but it felt better than empty hands. The scraping came again, closer. Not boots this time, but skin, soft skin on a surface it doesn't belong on, like someone dragging their palm or the side of their foot along drywall. My stomach turned. I crept to Eli's room first, because I had to see him. I had to know he was still there. I cracked the door and saw his little shape under the blankets, the nightlight painting him in that soft yellow, and his chest rising and falling. Steady, I left the door open a crack so I could hear if he changed. Then I stepped into the hallway. The air there felt heavier, like walking into a room where a fight just happened. I held my breath and listened. And the sound came again, right then. Not from the front door this time, but from the wall opposite it, the one that faces the yard. A slow slide, then a stop, then a dull press, the way a hand feels when it pushes against glass from the other side. I could feel it through the floorboards. Faint, like a vibration. I don't know how long I stood there, rooted, the flashlight heavy and stupid in my hand, thinking, if I don't see it, it's not there. If I open the door, something will change forever. But if I don't, it already has, this loop going around and around in my head. And over all of it, this other thought, the worst one, the one I'd been trying not to let surface. What if it's not outside? What if it's already in? And all of this is just it, reminding me, claiming the boundaries. I know how that sounds. I know. But when your own walls start to feel like they belong to something else, you don't think right. Finally, without really deciding to, my hand moved. I walked to the front door again, the dresser still shoved in front of it from the other night. I put the flashlight down, and one, pushed my shoulder into the wood of the dresser and slid it just enough to reach the knob. My muscles burned. The scraping sound paused, like it was listening. I don't know if that's just how I remember it or if it really did. But that's how it felt, like a held breath on the other side of the wall. My heart sounded so loud in my ears I thought it might drown out everything else. And once again, like an idiot, like a moth flying at a porch light, I opened the door. Just a crack. The cold came in instantly, sharper than any other night, slicing through the thin warmth I'd built up inside. The porch was darker than it had any right to be, like the light from the house didn't quite reach it. And even before my eyes fully adjusted, I could feel it. That sense, that pressure, like there was something standing just beyond where the light faded. Not back at the yard, not at the steps, but close. So close that if I took one more step, I'd walk right into it. My skin crawled from my scalp to my ankles, every little hair standing up. The air felt crowded. That's the best word I have. Crowded, like a bus aisle when it's full. But there was nothing there. Nothing I could see. No outline, no shadow. Just the same boards, the same rail, and the faint glitter of frost. And then, as my eyes finally caught up, I saw that the frost where the boards met the wall had already melted in a long, thin strip, as if something had been standing flush against the house for a while, radiating just enough warmth to clear it. My brain did that thing again where it tried to label it as a leak, a draft, some kind of heat from the crawl space. Anything, but there was no pattern, just the smear of clear wood surrounded by white. And as I watched, I swear to you, man, I swear on my boy's life, I saw the faint outline of a heel form in the frost at my feet. Like invisible weight had shifted and pressed down. The crystals collapsing. Then the suggestion of toes, not full, not as clear as in the mornings, but enough. I just couldn't. Something in me snapped. Not in a dramatic way, not screaming, nothing like that. It was smaller, quieter, like a string inside pulled so tight it broke. I slammed the door and didn't even bother with the locks this time. I just shoved the dresser back with everything I had until it thumped against the frame and I stumbled. I went to Eli's room and crawled into bed beside him, fully dressed, shoes and all, my whole body shaking. He stirred and put one little hand on my arm and mumbled, "Cold." And I whispered, "I know, baby, I know." And I stared at the wall until the gray light came and the sounds of morning birds started up like nothing was wrong. The prints were there again that day. Of course they were. Darker, more defined, circling the property like lines on a record, up to the windows, around the barn, stopping once more at the front door. I couldn't. It felt like looking them straight in the face would be like inviting something, acknowledging some kind of contract I didn't remember signing. I waited until Eli was on the bus, waving out the fogged glass. And then I stood in the doorway and looked down, and the boards were stained where the frost had melted, not just that little frame print, but both sides of the threshold. Like two sets of feet had been standing there facing each other, almost touching, mine and something else's. That's when I did call my sister about moving in. I dialed her at work, voice shaking, and I actually started the conversation. This is how you know I was really rattled. I started with the truth. I said, "Sandy, something is wrong at the house." And my voice broke, and she immediately went into big sister mode, asking if somebody had broken in, if I was hurt. And I realized in that second that I could either say what I was actually seeing and risk hearing that silence on the other end, that doubt, that slow distance, or I could frame it as something she understood. So I said, "I think someone's been creeping around at night. I keep finding footprints and the dog's acting weird." And she said, "Come stay with me a few days. We'll get the locks changed. We'll figure it out." But she couldn't take us right that second. She had to work through the weekend, and then the kids' room was full of Christmas stuff, so it would be after, always later, later, later. So I said, okay. We'd stick it out until then. And that's what I've been doing, sticking it out. Because here's the thing, and I hate saying this part out loud the most, because this is the part that makes me feel like maybe something's wrong in my head. Even though my body knows it's not, the footprints stopped, at least outside. A couple days after that last night, I just stopped appearing in the frost. And the dirt, the motion light went back to its normal, boring routine. Clicking on for raccoons and wind-blown bags, Rusty started sleeping in his house again. The goats started bleeding like normal at feeding time. If you came by now, you wouldn't see anything strange. You'd see a worn little farmhouse, some animals, a yard that needs raking. That's it. Just me, and the way my hands shake when the temperature drops. But it didn't really stop. Not all of it. It just moved. Like it decided the outside wasn't enough. A few weeks after the last prints outside, I was sweeping in the hallway, the one between the bedrooms. I'd shut all the doors so I could get the dust without it drifting into the rooms. And the light overhead kept flickering. Not in a spooky way, just that cheap fixture needing a new bulbway, and I was grumbling to myself, thinking about bills, about the price of cereal, about normal things, and I swept the pile of dust and dog hair toward the bathroom. And that's when I saw them. Faint. Almost nothing. Just slightly cleaner patches on the dingy hardwood. A heel. A ball. 5 little ovals where the toes would have been, one in front of the other, right down the center of the hall. Not my boot tread, not Eli's little sneakers. Bare, and for a second my brain tried to tell me it was just from where I walk most, that traffic had worn it smooth. But there was another set, crossing that path at an angle, the same distance apart, the same size as the ones outside had been, and there's no world in which I have been walking barefoot back and forth in that hall in winter. Not with how cold it gets, and not with the way my feet look always in socks or boots. I stood there, holding the broom, heart pounding, and watched as the light overhead flickered one last time and went steady. The prints almost disappearing as the angle changed, like they were only there if you looked from a certain way. Seeing the line, time no sane. Seen, and this in the line no sane, and this in the line, with UR7.com. And that's when it hit me that this isn't about the yard, or the frost, or even the porch. Not really. It's about paths. About something that decided to start tracing mine, learning them, pacing them, memorizing the shape of where I live and move. And once I let that thought in, I couldn't get it back out. Since then, little things keep happening, never big enough that I can hold them up to somebody else and say, "See, right here. This is wrong." But constant, relentless. The kind of things that make you feel like your house is breathing a little out of sync with you. A mug I'm sure I left in the sink ends up on the counter by the back door. The TV remote turns up on the floor, right where those invisible prints would have walked, which I have started closing all the way every night, is sometimes open just a crack in the morning, like someone put their fingers in the gap and eased it. My phone, which I leave charging on the nightstand, has been on the dresser twice. When I woke up, in the screen face down. The first few times I told myself I must have moved it half asleep. But the last time, the charger cord was still looped in the shape it makes when it's plugged in, just lying there empty, and the phone was 3 feet away, like it had been lifted and set, not tugged. And now, the worst part, the part I almost didn't want to say to you, because once I say it, it's going to feel more real, is that sometimes, when the house is quiet and Eli is at school, and I'm sitting at the table drinking my coffee, just one soft step, not enough to say for sure, and then the feeling that someone is standing just out of sight, just at the edge, like the inside of my own house, has taken on the same feeling the yard had. Those mornings, being circled, being measured, I've started avoiding certain places without even meaning to. I won't stand at the front door longer than I have to, just enough to lock it. I don't like walking down the hallway with the lights off, even in the middle of the day, not if I can help it, and on really cold nights. Nights like that one, when the stars are too bright and the air feels thin. I hear Rusty shifting in his house, and then, sometimes, nothing. And I know without looking that he's gone to sleep in the barn again, huddled up with the goats, all of them turned away from the wall that faces the house. Like they know something I don't, or like they understand it better. Animals always do. That's what people say, right? I don't know what this is. I don't have a name for it. And I think that's part of why it's so hard to talk about. There's no story to hang it on. No old tale about a woman in white or some cursed land. It's just wrong. Simple and pure. An adult-sized footprint, walking barefoot in places nobody should. Outside in the frost, along the edges of my life. Then inside, faint, following my paths, and I can't prove any of it. I can't film it. I tried, remember, and all I got was that shimmer. I can't show you anything but the way my voice shakes when I talk about it, and the fact that I don't go outside in the dark anymore unless I absolutely have to. I park the truck as close to the porch as possible. I leave shoes by Eli's bed in case we have to leave fast. Even though I don't know where we'd go, that would be better. I jump every time the motion light clicks on, even now that it's acting normal. And when I go out in the mornings to feed the goats, I look at the ground first, every time. Even when it's warm and there's no way frost could show anything, I still look, scanning for that shape, that heel, that careful spacing. And when I don't see it, I don't feel relief. Not really. I just feel like it's somewhere else at the moment, tracing a different line, waiting. Maybe not outside at all, maybe just 3 feet behind me, matching my steps. I swear to God, to you, I am not crazy. I know how this sounds, but this is my life now. This constant awareness of where my feet are, where theirs might be, of the boundaries of this little farmhouse and how thin they really are. I don't work extra night shifts anymore, even though we need the money. I don't let Eli sleep alone when it's freezing. I make excuses about why his friends can't stay over, because the idea of someone else being here at 3 in the morning when something presses its foot against my doorframe makes me sick, like it would be dragging somebody else into whatever this is. I'm not telling you this so you can fix it. I don't think you can. I don't even know if I believe anybody can. I'm telling you because my head feels full of these little details. The blue hoodie, the egg pan, the red clock numbers, the frost at the corners of the window, and threaded through all of them, always, that print, that path, and I need it to live somewhere else for a while, even if it's just in your ears, so maybe I can sleep, just one night, without dreaming of bare feet walking slow circles around my bed. My name's Kyle Mercer. I'm from Point Blank, out by Lake Livingston, and I work as a drywall finisher. And I am telling you right now, I am not doing this because I like talking. Man, I am doing this because if I keep it in my head any longer, I feel like my chest is going to crack. So just listen, and then you can decide if you think I am crazy or not. I had a normal day that morning. That is the part that still bothers me. It started stupid regular, you know. I got up around 5:30 because my phone alarm went off with that same boring tone. I hit snooze twice. I remember that because when I finally checked the time it was 5:48 and I cursed at myself in my head for wasting almost 20 minutes. I sat up on that old mattress in my trailer, the one that sinks in the middle, and the first thing I noticed was my left sock from the night before was still on my foot and the right one was somewhere on the floor. It sounds dumb, but I remember looking at that sock and thinking, I really need to buy new ones because the heel was thinning out. I walked into the tiny kitchen. My shoulder bumped that loose cabinet door because it always hangs a little open. I poured the last of the cheap coffee into the machine. 2 scoops, and then I shook the tin to get the crumbs out. I had 2 slices of white bread, put peanut butter on one and jelly on the other, slapped them together and ate it, standing there in front of the sink while the coffee dripped. I was wearing my gray work pants, the ones with the dry joint compound on the knees, and that faded blue long-sleeve shirt with the little bleach dot near the bottom. I grabbed my black hoodie off the back of the chair. It still smelled a little like cigarette smoke from one of the guys on the site. I do not smoke, but it gets in your clothes anyway. And I checked the time again on the microwave. 6:03. I always look at the microwave and not the phone when I am about to walk out. I do not know why. Habit. I guess I locked the trailer door. Jiggled it twice to make sure because the lock sticks. Then walked out into that stupid cold air. It was that kind of damp December cold we get out here sometimes. Not snow or anything nice like that, just wet air that gets into your sleeves, you know. There was a little bit of fog over the trees behind the park. Not thick, just sitting low over the ground. I could hear highway 190 inches the distance, like a soft rush. Somebody had their porch light still on, 2 trailers down, yellow light on all those plastic chairs that nobody actually uses. I got into my truck, that old silver Silverado with the dent on the passenger door where that kid hit me in the Brookshire Brothers parking lot, turned the key twice, because it never fires up. First try when it is cold. Radio came on. With that country station, I always leave it on. Some ad about a tire place in Livingston. I took my coffee in that chipped black travel mug. It rattled in the cup holder. I checked the time on the dash. 6:09. And I pulled out. That was it. Just another morning. Nothing weird. The sky was still dark, but you could see that faint light coming up behind the trees. The kind of blue that means the sun is thinking about it. I was supposed to go to a job in Livingston. New build. We were doing ceilings in a house off 146. I remember thinking if we finished that one today, maybe I could get that Friday half day. I was doing math in my head about hours. And gas money. I drove past the same gas station I always pass. The one on the corner where the sign flickers. I checked the price without really looking. $3 a gallon. I told myself I would fill up later. I stopped at the light by the high school, watched the kids at the bus stop with their breath in the air. I had one of those stupid thoughts, like at least they do not have to worry about invoices and rent yet. The light turned green. I went on. That is how normal it was. That is what I keep coming back to. There was nothing in the morning that said, hey, tonight you are going to see something that is going to ruin this lake for you forever. We worked all day. Man, it was boring. just lifting sheets, holding them up, trying not to get that dust in my eyes. My boss, Ray, was talking about some football game. The helper kid kept checking his phone. We broke for lunch, a little after 12. I had that sad gas station burrito and a bag of chips, sat on the tailgate. Sun was out by then. Real bright. You would not think it was December if you just looked at the light. But the shade was still cold. We talked about nothing. Everybody complained about how there was never enough work and somehow also always too much. Just regular job talk. We wrapped up around 4:30. Did a last walkthrough, loaded the tools. I signed the little sheet Ray always has, so he can track hours. And I remember seeing the time on my phone when I climbed back into my truck. It said 4:42, and there was one missed call from my mom. I did not listen to the voicemail right away. I just started the truck, pulled out, and only when I got to the stop sign did I call her back. She picked up on the second ring and asked if I was coming by that night. She had leftover stew, she said, and I told her I was tired and probably just going home. Maybe tomorrow. She said all right, but I could hear it in her voice. She worries. She always worries. Since my uncle went into that water, I said I would call her later. We hung up. It was nothing. I turned left instead of right at that light, and I do not even really know why. I have told this part so many times in my own head, and I still cannot tell you exactly what made me do it. I was heading toward 190, but there is that turn you can take toward the lake, out past some little stores and that bait shop, and my hands just did it, like they were bored of the usual route, or like something in me wanted to see the water again. Even though I swear to God I have tried to stay away from that place for years. I did not go back to Lake Livingston. Not really. Not to the ramps. Not to the spots we used to fish with my uncle. Not since that night. You have to understand that first. I was a kid when he drowned, 12 years old, and I see it every time I close my eyes long enough, the way the lights from the truck lit the ripples, the way the rope went slack, the sound my mother made when they pulled him out. It has been over a decade, and it is still right there, so I avoided that whole side of the lake. I told myself it was because of gas or time, but it was fear, straight fear. So when I turned that wheel that day, it felt wrong as soon as I did it. Like walking into the wrong house without knocking. I even said out loud in the truck, "What am I doing?" And then I laughed at myself. Little nervous laugh. Like I was just taking the scenic way home. That is what I told myself. You are just going to drive past the water. Maybe sit for a minute. It is December. Nobody is out there. It will be quiet. You can just sit. Maybe that is what I wanted. Quiet, because the house was never quiet growing up after he died. Just my mom crying in another room. Or my grandpa yelling about how it was nobody's fault. And also everybody's fault at the same time. I do not know. Man, I turned, and I kept going. The sun was low by then. That orange kind of light over the trees. Those tall pines throwing long shadows across the road. I passed that old RV park, half the slots empty. A dog chained up in one yard barked at my truck. I turned down the smaller road that leads to one of the public ramps. The one we used to use because my uncle liked it better. He said the angle was nicer for the boat. Stupid detail to still remember. Right? But I do. I pulled in, and at first I thought nobody was there at all. The parking area was mostly empty. Just some tire tracks drying in the dirt, a couple of beer cans near the edge, those big yellow posts by the water. And then I saw the sign with the faded rules. No glass, no swimming off the ramp, all that. Sky was turning more blue-gray now. That flat winter color. I parked facing the lake, turned the engine off, and for a second, I almost turned it back on and left because I felt that thump in my chest. That thing that says this is a bad idea, but I did not. I just sat there with my hands on the wheel, looking at the water. It was calm, real calm, almost too smooth, with just a couple of tiny ripples near the far bank where the trees come right up to the shore, and there was this thin skin of ice right at the shallow part by the concrete of the ramp. Not thick, just a crust. It does not freeze solid out here much, but that morning had been cold, and it stayed cold in the shade. So you had this line where the water looked darker and clear farther out, and then this milky, slightly frosted look right by the concrete. I could see where a boat trailer tire had broken through earlier, maybe. Little spider cracks. It was quiet. That is the main thing. No boats, no kids, no music, just that soft lap of water under the ice, and some birds way off. My truck ticked as the engine cooled. Lake smell mixed with exhaust and my coffee breath. I sat like that a good minute, maybe more, and then I thought, you are being silly. Just get out, stretch your legs. You have not been here since you were a kid. It is just a place. The lake is just water. It is not waiting on you. So I grabbed my hoodie, zipped it up, grabbed my keys, and opened the door. That cold air slammed into my face, had that sharp feel that gets at your teeth. I could see my breath now, a little white puffs. I locked the truck and put the keys in my hoodie pocket. I could hear the little jingle, and I started walking toward the ramp. Gravel under my boots. Crunching. The concrete had little dark patches where it stayed damp. I was watching my steps because there is always that slime near the waterline. I did not want to end up on my back. I walked down until I was maybe 10 feet from where the ice started. And I just stood there, looking at where, in my head, I still see my uncle going under, even though he did not drown right at this exact ramp. It was up the shore a little. But the concrete, the angle, the line of trees, it all rhymes. It feels the same. I jammed my hands into my hoodie pocket. I realized I had not put on gloves. My fingers were already starting to sting. So it was already getting close to dark. That winter, kind of fast dark, where you blink and it is gone. My phone said the temperature was 41 degrees. I put the phone back in my pocket, and that is when Duke whined. I forgot to tell you. See, this is what happens. I jump around. I had Duke with me. My dog. He is a mixed something. Mostly lab with some other stuff in him. Brown dog with a white patch. He is usually fine in the truck. He loves the lake, which is ironic considering he had been in the back seat the whole time. Curled up, I just kind of tuned him out. When I opened the door earlier, he lifted his head, but did not try to jump out because I told him stay. He is good about that. But when I walked toward the ramp and got to that spot, he started whining from inside the truck, high-pitched, not his normal bark. That sound got under my skin. I turned around and saw him standing with his front paws on the armrest between the seats, nose pressed against the glass, eyes fixed past me, not at me. That was the first thing that was wrong. I figured maybe he wanted to pee or something, so I whistled and waved him over. Forgetting the windows were up, he just kept whining, pawing at the glass. So I shrugged, turned back around, and that was when I saw her. The woman at the ramp. I swear to God she was not there when I walked down. I have gone over this 100 times. There was nobody on that concrete when I stepped onto it. It was empty all the way to the water. I would have noticed a person, especially someone standing barefoot in a white nightgown when it is that cold outside. But there she was, about maybe 20 feet from me, closer to the waterline, right where the concrete meets that thin ice. Her back was to me. She was facing the lake, standing dead still. Her feet were on the wet part of the concrete. You could see the skin of the ice almost touching her toes, and she had no shoes on, just pale feet, red at the edges from cold. That thin fabric hanging down around her calves. Soaked from the bottom up, it clung to her legs, darker from the water, and her hair was hanging long and straight down her back. dark and stringy. Wet too. Dripping. I could see the water dripping, little dark dots on the concrete near her heels. She was not shivering, not hugging herself. Nothing. Just standing there, staring straight ahead at that flat water. I stopped walking right away, because it scared me in that weird social way first. You know, the "oh no, I am bothering somebody" way. I thought maybe she was in trouble. Maybe she was going to walk in. Or maybe it was some homeless person. Or somebody with problems. I felt that little twist in my stomach. I looked back at Duke. He was now barking. But it was that low, uncertain bark. Not mad. More like afraid. His ears were flat, and that hit me harder than seeing her did. Because that dog does not scare easy, I turned back to her and said, "Ma'am, are you all right?" I said it loud because the water can mess with sound. My voice echoed a little off the trees. She did not move, not even a flinch, so I took a couple of steps closer, careful, and said it again. "Ma'am, you okay? You need help." It felt like my words were hitting a wall. There was no reaction. She did not tilt her head or shift her weight. Nothing. The air felt colder down there than it had up in the parking area. Not just a little. I could feel it in my nose and my eyes. They started to water from the cold. And I thought, that is weird. It was chilly, but not that bad before. I almost took my phone out to check the temperature again. But something about that felt wrong. Like looking away from her would be a mistake. I know that does not make sense. But that is what I felt. Then Duke barked again behind me, and I half turned my head, just enough to look back at the truck, and he was scratching at the window now, almost frantic. And I swear to God, that whole moment could not have been more than a second or two. Just a glance. But when I turned my head back, she was closer. I mean, I did not see her move. I did not hear footsteps or splashing or anything. But she was not 20 feet away anymore. She was more like 15. And the line where the wet concrete ended was now at her heels, like she had come up the ramp toward me a little. That made my chest seize up, like when you miss a stair in the dark. I took a step back without deciding to. My boot scuffed on the concrete. I said, "Hey, how did you do that?" Which is a stupid thing to say. But that is what came out. My voice sounded wrong in my own ears. Thin, like it did not belong to me. I tried to laugh, and it came out dry. I said, "Ma'am, you are going to catch your death out here. Where are your shoes?" Nothing. Still no answer. Still no movement that I could see. Just that same straight back, long wet hair. Nightgown sticking to her legs, the water line on the fabric a little higher now, and the sound of Duke behind me whining like his heart was breaking. I thought, okay, maybe she did move and I just spaced out. Maybe I am more tired than I thought. Maybe I looked longer at the truck than I remember. I tried to be reasonable. I told myself not to make it into something. Then the wind came, except it was not really wind. The way you think of it, the trees around us did not move. Not a single branch. The surface of the lake out past the ramp stayed almost flat. Just those little ripples from before, but the air around me and especially near her got sharp and icy. Like walking into one of those freezer rooms at a grocery store, my breath went from little puffs to thick fog. I jammed them deeper into my pockets and finally pulled the phone out with numb fingers. The screen said the same time, 5:30 something. I do not remember the exact minute now, but I remember the temperature. It said 30, not 41 anymore. And that is a big drop for a couple of minutes. I swallowed. My mouth was dry. I looked back up from the phone, and I had that same feeling again. Like I had done something I should not have done by looking away, and sure enough, she was closer again. This time, There was no way to rationalize it. She was now maybe 10 feet from me. You know how far that is? That is like the distance from your couch to your TV. It is nothing. I could see the wetness on her hair better now. Each strand stuck together and hanging. I could see that the nightgown was not really pure white. It had little blue flowers on it. Tiny ones. In a faded pattern. Like something your grandma would wear. And there was a line across the fabric where it went from dry to soaked. Darker below. Clinging to her thighs. And the water was dripping from that hem in a steady rhythm. Drip, drip, drip. But I could not hear it hit the concrete. It just disappeared into the sound of the air. She was still turned away from me, still facing the lake, but her head had tilted just a little, like she was listening now. And I wanted to run. Everything in me, from the back of my brain to my toes, was yelling, "Get back in the truck, get out of here." But another part of me, that stubborn part that does not like to be scared, said, "If you turn your back on this without knowing what it is, it will follow you." And maybe that sounds dramatic, but that is what I felt. That if I treated her like a shadow, she would become one. I heard my own voice say, "I am going to call somebody." And it came out shaky. I cleared my throat, tried again. "Ma'am, if you do not answer me, I am going to call the sheriff out here. You cannot just stand in the freezing water like this. It is not safe." I took one more step back. My heel found a crack in the concrete, and I almost tripped. My arms flailed a little, and I know for a fact that in that second my eyes left her. My focus shifted to not falling. I blinked, and when I looked up, she was right there, right in front of me. Not 10 feet anymore, not 5, within arm's reach. If I had held my hand out, I would have touched her. I gasped so hard my throat burned. Duke went insane behind me, full on barking now, claws scraping the inside of the door. I could hear him throwing his weight against the glass. But all of that felt far away, because every part of my attention was on her, and she was still turned away, still not facing me, but now I could see the side of her face just a little. The curve of a cheek, the edge of an ear, skin too pale, veins a faint blue under it, and that waterline up her nightgown had crept even higher, up toward her waist. And yet there was no puddle around her feet, no splashing, no dripping sound. The concrete was damp, sure, but not like it should be if she had just walked up out of the lake. The smell hit me then too. Not the lake smell from before. Something else. Old. Like towels that never dry. Like closets that never get opened. I felt my stomach twist. I said, "Ma'am," in almost a whisper. And I realized I was crying. Not big sobs, just tears running down my face from the cold and fear mixed together. I wiped my cheek with my sleeve without thinking. My hand brushed my mouth, and my lips felt numb. That is how cold it was around her. I remember thinking, "You are going to get frostbite out here in Texas. That is stupid." And then another thought slid in under that one. Quiet, but solid. That I knew, that nightgown, that pattern, those little blue flowers. I had seen them before, but my brain would not give me the memory yet. It was like when a word sits on the tip of your tongue. I swallowed hard, felt my heart pounding in my chest like it was going to punch through my ribs, and I forced myself to take a slow breath, in through my nose, out through my mouth. That is what they teach you in those videos about panic, right? But the air coming in hurt, like breathing in ice. Duke gave this long, miserable howl behind me that I've never heard from him before or since. And something in that sound made her move. Not all the way, not a turn, but her head twitched, a sharp little jerk, like a puppet on a string. And I saw more of her cheek. And that is when the memory finally clicked. My uncle had a night like this once, years before he drowned, when he stayed over at my grandparents' house. I woke up in the night to get water, and I saw him sitting at the kitchen table with a blanket around his shoulders and my grandma making tea in that old kettle, and she was wearing a nightgown with little blue flowers on it. The same pattern. The exact same. And I know that sounds like a leap, but I am telling you, it was the same, and that made everything 100 times worse. Because now this was not just some random person, it was tied to my family in a way that did not make sense. I whispered, "Grandma," before I could stop myself. And as soon as that word left my mouth, the woman's shoulders twitched again. This time more. Her head tilted a little more to the side, but she still did not turn. And the cold pressed in closer, almost buzzing in my ears. I took half a step back, but I could not go far. My legs felt heavy, like the air itself was thick, like walking through water. That is the only way I can explain it. I realized my phone was still in my hand, screen locked now, black, reflecting a tiny shape of me and her. 2 figures on the ramp. My thumb was frozen over the side button. I forced my fingers to move, unlocked it, went to the dialer. My brain saying, "Call 911, call now." But another thought pushed up against that, loud as a shout in my head. You do not want a record of this. You do not want anybody to hear the operator say, "There is nobody there," when they pull up. You do not want the laugh. You do not want to be the guy in town who sees things. I stood there shaking, finger hovering over the numbers, and finally I hit the button to turn the screen off instead. The reflection vanished. It was just darkness now, and the second it did, I felt that same shift. Like the world took one small step sideways. The sound of Duke, the slight slap of distant water, the nothing else, all of it squeezed for a heartbeat and then let go. There was no way to miss it. She did not walk the way you and I walk. No shift in the hips, no roll of the shoulders, no weight from one foot to the other. She just slid, a straight, small movement, like somebody dragging her a foot closer on a wire. No sound of feet on wet concrete. No splash. Just closer, close enough that if I reached out my arm, I could have touched her hair. Close enough that I could see the tiny goosebumps on the skin of her neck. Close enough that I could smell the lake on her. Stale and cold. I wanted to scream, but my throat locked. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. And then, without really planning to, I said his name, my uncle's name. I said, "Daniel," and my voice cracked on the last syllable. It came out weak and broken, and the second that name hit the air she stopped, just froze even more, if that is possible. And then she turned, not all the way at once, not in a smooth motion. It was like watching a bad video connection. Little jerks, a few degrees at a time. Her head first, then her shoulders, then the rest of her. And as she turned, the air dropped again. Tears on my cheeks went colder. The sky went a shade darker, even though it was not that late yet. My ears rang, and I watched her face come into view. I am telling you right now, I wish I had run. I wish I had turned and sprinted for the truck the second I saw her the first time. Because what I saw when she turned is something I cannot unsee. Ever. Even when I close my eyes. Especially when I close my eyes. She had my uncle's face. Not perfectly. Not like a photograph. Like somebody took his face from my memory and left it underwater too long. Changed the way the skin sat on the bones. But it was him. The same crooked nose he broke when he was a teenager. The same little scar above his eyebrow where a branch hit him. Once, when we were clearing brush, the same dimple in the chin, but wrong. All of it a little too pale. A little too soft. Like bread left in water. And the eyes. Man, the eyes are what got me. They were open. Wider than natural. And the whites had that cloudy look. Not full-on milky, but the edges, like something that had been looking up from under the water for too long, and there were little red veins radiating out from the irises. His eyes had been brown, warm brown. I remember that. But these were washed out. Same color, but without the light inside. And he was smiling, or something like it. His mouth stretched wider than I ever saw on him when he was alive. Lips pulled back just a bit too far, showing teeth that were too even, too many, like the smile did not belong on that face, like it had been pasted on. He did not blink. He did not move his lips. But I heard his voice, clear as if he was standing next to me. On dry land, the way he sounded when he used to pick me up early for fishing and whisper so we would not wake my mom. He said, "You finally came back, kid." But I could see his mouth, and it did not move with the words. It stayed in that stretched smile. The sound just came out of the cold air around us, slipped into my ears, into my head. I staggered back, almost fell. My heel hit a slick patch and my legs went out from under me. I landed hard on my backside. My hand slapped the concrete, and I felt the ice right there at my fingertips. Thin and brittle, but solid enough to have that glassy feel. My fingers went numb instantly, pain shooting up my arm. I scrambled, boots sliding, trying to push myself farther up the ramp, away from the water. But it felt like I was on one of those bad dreams, where your legs will not work right. I could see her, still standing where it was, watching me with those washed-out eyes and that wrong smile, and it took one more smooth, sliding step forward without lifting its feet, even though I did not see the feet move. And now it was bent slightly, like it was leaning toward me, and I heard his voice again, softer now, almost like a laugh. "You left me here. Remember, kid." That there was nothing I could do, that the current took him, that these things happen. But I was the one on the shore that night. I was the one who did not see he was in trouble until it was too late. Those are not words I have ever said out loud. You left me here. But they are words I have thought. Exactly. In that order. In my own head at 3 a.m. All these years. So hearing them in his voice, from that wrong mouth that did not move, that broke something in me. I started babbling. I do not even know what I said. Stuff like, "I am sorry. I did not know. I was a kid. I tried to get help." My teeth were chattering, but not just from the cold. My whole body was. I could hear Duke going insane behind me, throwing his whole weight against the door. The truck rocking a little, claws scratching. He was whining between barks, high and scared. He has never done that, not even in storms. The air kept pressing in, heavy and cold, like it wanted to push me down into that water. And I swear to God, for a second I knew. Like you know the taste of something without putting it in your mouth. That if I let myself slide just a little more, if my boots lost that bit of friction they still had, if my hand slipped wrong, I would go backward onto that ice. And the ramp would be empty by the time anybody got there. Just another stupid lake tragedy. And people would say, he should have known better than to go down there in winter, and that thing would stand there and wait for the next one. I dug my fingers into the little grooves in the concrete, pushed with my heels, and managed to scoot myself back another foot. My vision had started to tunnel. You know, black edges closing in. But it widened back out a little, and I saw something change in its face. Not a big change, just the eyes, the tiniest narrowing, like it was disappointed, like it had misjudged. The smile stayed pinned in place. The voice in the air went quiet. Even Duke's barking dropped to this low, miserable whine, and for a heartbeat everything was completely still, like the whole world was holding its breath. Then, far off, I heard a car drive past up on the main road, just the whoosh of it on the asphalt, and it was like that little sound from regular life punched a hole in whatever was happening. The spell, or whatever you want to call it. The cold backed off in a rush, not all the way, but enough that I could feel my fingers again. Pins and needles. The air tasted like it did when I first got out of the truck. Damp but not sharp. My phone buzzed in my hand. I looked down without thinking and saw a text from my mom asking if I got home safe yet. That normal, stupid little message. And when I looked back up, she was gone. The concrete in front of me was empty. Just the wet edge. That thin line of ice on the water. Some leaves stuck in it. No footprints except mine. No wet patch where she had been standing. I could see him out of the corner of my eye, pacing in the back seat, his breath fogging the windows. I stayed on the concrete on my backside for a long time. I do not know how long. Long enough that the sky went from blue-gray to darker. Long enough that the security light on the pole behind the parking area clicked on with that little electric buzz. Finally, I pushed myself up. My knees were shaking. There was a damp patch on the seat of my pants where I had slid into some leftover water. My hands were red and raw from the cold and the scrape of concrete. I walked up the ramp, every step, feeling like it might not land right. Like the ground was not quite solid. I did not look back at the water. Not once. I could feel it behind me. That pull, like when you stand at the edge of a drop and some part of you wants to lean forward, but I kept my eyes on the truck, on Duke, on that familiar dent in the door. I unlocked it with fingers that fumbled the key twice, finally yanked it open, and Duke launched himself out past me, almost knocked me over. He ran around the side of the truck, then came back and pressed himself against my leg, whole body shaking, tail low, ears down. I had never seen him like that. I grabbed his collar and said, "It is okay. It is okay." Even though I did not believe it, I got us both inside, slammed the doors, locked them, like that would make a difference. And I sat there, hands on the wheel, engine off. In the dark cab, Duke panting and whining in the back, I could see my own reflection faint in the windshield. Eyes wide, face pale. I turned the key finally, the engine turned over. The radio came on halfway through some song about trucks and broken hearts. I turned it off. Could not stand the noise. I put the truck in reverse and backed out of there as carefully as I could. My hands were still shaking, so bad the wheel shuddered. When I hit the main road, I did not turn toward home. I drove the long way around, past town, on roads with more lights, more houses. I did not want to be near the lake, not even on the other side of the trees. My phone buzzed again with another text. I ignored it. I kept driving until I ended up at my mom's place, without really deciding to. I pulled into her driveway, sat there a second, then went inside. She took one look at me and asked what happened. I told her I slipped at the job and scared myself. I could not bring myself to say the lake. Not that night. Maybe not ever. I ate her stew, barely tasted it, took a hot shower because I could not shake the cold, even though the thermometer on her wall said the house was 72. That night I did not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face. My uncle's, and not my uncle's. That wrong smile, those washed out eyes. And I heard that sentence, again and again. "You left me here, kid," over and over, like a loop. I turned the TV on. Old reruns, turned the volume up, but underneath it I could still hear it. Duke refused to sleep on the floor like he usually does. He jumped up on the bed and pressed himself against my legs. Every time I twitched, he lifted his head and whined. For days after that, maybe weeks, I could not go near any body of water bigger than a bathtub. I took the long way to jobs so I would not have to cross the bridge with the lake view. If somebody on site started telling a fishing story, I would find an excuse to go to the truck. I told Ray I did not do any jobs near the shore anymore. I did not give him a reason. He did not ask, just shrugged. Said there was plenty inland. My mom kept asking why I was so jumpy. I kept saying I was tired. And that is true. I have not really slept right since. That was last December. It has been a year almost, and I am still sitting here behind my own trailer with the porch light off, talking into my phone. Duke asleep at my feet, but even in his sleep he kicks like he is running. I swear to God, sometimes when I am driving at night and the road dips and rises, my headlights catch a flash of white at the edge of the ditch. Some shape that could be a person, could be a post, could be nothing. And my hands grip the wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. I do not go to family gatherings when they do them at the lake anymore. I make excuses. I say I have work. They think I am avoiding them because of old fights. And maybe that is part of it. But mostly it is because I know that ramp is still there. That concrete with the little cracks and the thin winter ice right at the edge. And I know that if I stand there long enough, if I let my eyes leave the water and come back, she will be there again, in that nightgown with the blue flowers, and she will move closer every time I look away, until there is no space left between us at all. And I do not know what happens after that. I do not want to know. I changed my route to work. I changed my job when I could, so I did more interior and less exterior. I even moved my bed away from the window because the way the streetlight hits the glass at night sometimes makes this tall, pale shape on the wall that looks too much like somebody standing at the foot of a ramp. And the worst part, the part I do not tell anybody when they joke about me being skittish around water, is that sometimes in the middle of the night, when everything is quiet and the fridge hums and the clock ticks, I will get this smell in the trailer. That old wet fabric smell, like towels left in a washer, and the air will go a few degrees colder just for a minute, just in the doorway between the kitchen and the hall. And Duke will stand up and stare at that spot with his ears laid back and his tail down. And I do not have to see anything to know she is standing there. Not fully, not like at the ramp, but enough. And in my head I hear his voice again, soft this time, almost gentle. You came back once. You will come back again. And I have to sit up and turn every light on and hold my dog's collar and remind myself that I am on dry land, that my feet are not on concrete sloping into dark water, that there is no ice under my hand, but it does not matter, because that lake is in me now, and her, and him, and it, whatever you want to call it. And that is why I am saying this out loud into this cracked screen at 3 a.m. behind a trailer that needs a new roof, because maybe if I push the words out of my chest, they will take some of the weight with them. I do not work near the water anymore. I do not fish. I do not even watch shows where people are on boats, if I can help it. I drive the long way around everything, and if I ever feel that sudden drop in temperature for no good reason, if I catch a whiff of that old, wet nightgown smell in a place it does not belong, I do not look away from whatever is in front of me. Not for a second. Not to check my phone, not to look at my dog, not to blink longer than I have to, because I learned one thing on that ramp, one rule, and it is burned into me now. She gets closer every time you take your eyes off her, and one day, if you are not careful, there will be nowhere left to step back to. The frozen hitchhiker on Highway 281. I am trying not to shake the phone so much, but my hands will not stop, and it is cold out here. Not the kind of cold we get with a front, but that thin cold that feels like it comes from inside your bones. My name's Lane Ortega. I'm from a little strip of trailers outside Buchanan Dam up by Lake Buchanan, and I drive a freight rig for a stone yard out of Marble Falls. I am saying that right at the start, so you know I am a real person and not something somebody made up on the internet. I was wearing my gray yard hoodie with the company logo on it, the one with the grease stain right above the pocket from when the loader leaked on me back in October, and I remember that because I was standing in the kitchen that evening, looking down at that stain while the microwave finished with the breakfast burrito I was going to eat for dinner. It was one of those freezer ones that always split on one side so the beans keep trying to fall out. I checked the time on my phone. And then flest 8 chaps, and more my beans. It was 21 inches the evening, and the weather app said 38 degrees in Marble Falls with a wind advisory. And I remember thinking that the weather app always made it sound worse than it felt, because my trailer walls rattle in a normal breeze, and they were rattling that whole day anyway. I drank half a cup of coffee. I had no business drinking that late. Kissed my little boy on the head while he was trying to get his tablet to charge right. Told my wife I would text from the yard when I hooked up, and walked out under that cheap yellow porch light that makes everything look sick. The gravel out front of the trailer crunched just the same way it always does. And the sky had that flat December look, not dark yet, but with no real color left. There was nothing strange then. Nothing at all. I got in my pickup, the old white Chevy that needs rear tires. Turned over the engine, heard that little belt squeal it always does when it is cold, and I remember that local country station was playing, but I switched it off because I wanted some quiet before the shift. I drove the same way I always do, out past the dark holes of the boat storage, across the dam with the water down below looking black and still, and then toward town where Marble Falls lights up a little. Not much. Tractors at the yard were already idling when I pulled in. I clocked in at 6:02. Late by 2 minutes, because I stood in the cab a second longer answering a text from my wife, asking if I could pick up milk on the way back in the morning. I hit the little time clock button, the one where you have to jab it twice because the screen thinks your fingers are too cold. And I remember the green check mark, because I thought, good, they will not complain about that again. Man. The dispatcher was at his desk in that little office that always smells like burnt coffee. He slid my paperwork through the opening in the glass. San Antonio and back, stone pallets. Nothing special. I joked with another driver, Tito, about the Cowboys game that weekend. We talked about a trailer that had a busted light, and he said he would swap with me if I wanted, and I told him no. I did not mind mine. I knew how she pulled. Just stupid little things. I went out, did my walk around, kicked the tires, checked the lines, checked the doors. I remember the way the air burned my nose when I bent down by the axles. We get used to heat out here, and then when it drops like that, everybody posts pictures of frost on their trucks like it is something crazy. I did not think it was crazy. I just zipped my hoodie all the way up and pulled my beanie down. I backed under the loaded trailer. Felt that little bump when Kingpin meets plate. Locked it. Tested the brakes. Everything clicked and hissed, just like it should. It was around 7:10 when I pulled out of the yard, my log app ticking over to driving. My phone clipped into the mount with the route open, even though I could drive 281 inches my sleep. People say that all the time, that they could drive some road in their sleep. I headed south first, toward Johnson City, because of how the times work with the plant in San Antonio, and the road was just a road. The dash threw that dull yellow light across my hands on the wheel. I turned on the same talk radio host I always listen to at the start of a run, the one who complains about everything but keeps me awake. The heater was working good. The gauge read a steady middle line, one of those little needles you never pay attention to until it is wrong. The first hour was boring in the way you actually want it to be. There were other cars, then fewer cars, then just the occasional set of headlights sliding past you in the other lane and then disappearing in the mirror. Out past the edge of town, the dark just eats everything. No streetlights, just your beams hitting the reflective posts and running over the stripes. I could smell that mix of coffee and coolant, and the faint old smell of cigarettes from the driver who had that rig before me. I do not smoke. I always meant to buy some cleaner for that. You see how normal it all was. Listen, I remember what I had in the little cooler behind my seat. 2 bottles of water, 1 Dr. Pepper, 1 cold slice of gas station pizza wrapped in foil. I had a little bag of chips, the cheap ones that cut up the roof of your mouth if you eat them too fast. I remember all of it. If it was just a dream, I would not remember if it was nacho flavor or barbecue. It was barbecue. I am telling you that because what came later is the part my head will not leave alone. But the beginning was just my life. It was somewhere after Johnson City when the first small thing went wrong, and I did not know it was wrong yet. I had passed through town, slowed for the lights, saw the Christmas displays they put up by the courthouse, a few people pumping gas at the station that is always open. That stretch between Johnson City and Marble Falls is long in the dark. Trees, fences, an occasional house set back from the road with a yard light, and then just nothing for a while. I set the cruise to a hair under the limit to keep dispatch off my back, settled into that rhythm. I know those miles. I know about how long it should take. I checked the clock when I cleared the last main light out of Johnson City. It said 8:03. I remember that. I remember the way the red numbers looked, and the way one of the segments in the 8 is dimmer, has been that way for months. I was not even thinking of anything heavy. I was thinking about how I needed to call the school about my boys' bus pickup for next semester. I was thinking about how my left wiper blade skips at the top of the arc. Then the heater blew a little colder, and I thought maybe I bumped the dial. But when I looked down, everything was set how I always set it. When I looked back up, he was there on the shoulder. A man, standing just outside the white line on the right, turned halfway toward the lane, with his arm out and his thumb not all the way up like in the movies, but kind of curled, fingers spread, like he could not quite make the shape. He was wearing a shirt that was wrong for the weather. Not a coat, not even a hoodie. It looked like one of those thin, long-sleeved work shirts you see on guys that work at oil change places, light blue or gray, open at the collar with something darker underneath, and jeans that hung stiff and straight, no hat. The wind was hitting him full in the face, and his hair, dark hair, was plastered back like it was wet or frozen. His mouth was open like he was trying to shout against the noise of the trucks, but no sound came that I could hear in the cab. What I saw, what made me grip the wheel, was that there were tracks in the gravel behind him, like he had been pacing back and forth from the ditch to the line over and over. I only had a few seconds as my headlights rolled over him. His eyes found mine right through the glass, and there were streaks on his cheeks that caught the light in a way that could have been tears or could have been something else. I do not know. He did not look drunk, did not look wild. He just looked like someone so cold he could barely move. Man, my first thought was that I was not supposed to stop for people. Not in the rig, not on a live run. They tell us straight in orientation. No riders, no matter what, no picking anyone up. It is a liability. That is what they say. So I kept going. I feel sick saying that now. I kept going, and my turn signal clicked loud in the silence because I flicked it on for no reason at all, and then flicked it back off, just my nerves. Like I was telling him no without wanting to make eye contact again. The heater kept blowing that weak air, and I reached over and turned it up anyway, even though the dial was already where I usually put it. Talk radio was still on, but the host's voice was starting to fuzz around the edges, like the signal was weak. Except that station comes in strong along that stretch. It was like there was this thin veil of static laid over his words, so every third word dropped out or hissed. I told myself it was the weather. I told myself maybe there was ice somewhere way up the antenna. I checked the outside temp on the dash. It said 32. That stuck in my head because it had been a few degrees warmer earlier. You know that number. That is the one where water decides what it is going to be. I drove on. My hands did not really stop shaking after that, but I figured I would drop down into Marble Falls, hit the plant, turn back, and by the time I was home the sun would be up and it would just be a story. I did not tell anybody because they would ask why I did not stop. I stayed in that thought until I saw him again. It was not long. I wish I had kept a closer eye on the mile markers, but my mind was wandering. And then the radio gave this long, low hiss, and everything on the dash dimmed, all at once, like the truck had sighed. The engine still sounded normal. The speedometer stayed where it should. But the light on the gauges pulled down to half for 2 beats of my heart and then came back up. In that dim moment I saw the shape ahead again, in the reach of my low beams. Same side of the road, same stance, same thin shirt and stiff jeans, same bare head. You know how sometimes your eyes tell you you saw the same thing twice, and you point out to yourself that sure, there can be 2 white trucks or 2 dogs or 2 people in red caps and it does not mean anything. That is what I tried to do, and then my brain pushed back, because this was not like that. His posture was exactly the same. His arm out at that same angle, the awkward thumb, even the way his shoulders were hunched like he was bracing himself for the blast of air from my truck. The tracks in the gravel behind him, those lines and scuffs, they looked the same too. I swear to God I had not driven in a circle. Highway 281 is a straight shot there. There is nowhere to loop without turning off, and I had not turned off. My log, the little map on my phone, they both showed a straight line south. I know somebody could say, maybe it was just another guy, but you were not there. It was him. My chest knew it before my head did, because my heart started hitting so hard I could feel it in my jaw. I slowed down more than I should have. The truck felt heavier, like the load had doubled, like I was climbing a grade that was not there. The radio host faded out completely, and what came in sounded like whispering, but the kind that is not words, just the shape of words, like air moving in a throat. I switched the radio off, and it did not help, because my brain tried to fill the sudden silence with what it thought it had almost heard. The heater needle dipped down another little bit. I could see my own breath now when I exhaled. Inside the cab. That is not how those things work, man. I know that. I have driven in cold before. It is not like a house with drafts. The cab holds heat. It should have held it that night. I reached for my phone, thinking I would call Tito or even the dispatcher just to hear another normal voice. But my hand did not make it. Instead, I found myself tightening my grip on the wheel and saying out loud, "Stop it. Just stop it." Like I was talking to a kid. I do not know who I was talking to. The second time I passed him, he turned his head a little more, and I got a better look at his face in the beam. There was frost, I think, on his eyebrows. White crust like salt. His lips looked stiff and too pale. His eyes did something that still wakes me up at night. They did not follow the truck. They were already where I was going to be. Like he was not tracking motion, but looking at a spot in the world, and I was crossing through it. It is a small difference when I try to explain it, but it felt like I was the one moving through his night instead of him being in mine. I drove on. I do not know how many minutes passed before the third time. The sign that tells you how much farther it is finally showed up and said I had eaten up the distance like always. My brain was trying to use those numbers as a life raft. See? It said, see, the world is still the world. But my body knew better. My fingers had gone numb on the steering wheel. Not just cold numb. It was like when your hand falls asleep and you smack it on something but can only feel it way off. I shook my fingers while I drove, tried to get sensation back, laughed at myself. This little cracked sound that did not sound like me. I checked my mirrors. Nothing behind me except darkness and my own red lights bouncing off the reflective posts. That was when something knocked on the back of the cab. 3 knocks. Not loud like someone pounding to break in, just polite. Firm. Right behind my head, on the wall between the driver's seat and the sleeper. I flinched so hard I nearly pulled the truck onto the shoulder. The sound did not fit. It was not like the creaks and pops you get when the frame twists a little or when something shifts in the back. It had rhythm. It said, someone. I said out loud, that is something in the load. Maybe a pallet settled. Maybe the straps. Talking myself through it like a child practicing lines. I checked the mirrors again. The trailer doors were closed tight. The latches in the same position. Nothing flapping. The knocks did not repeat. Instead, the heater fan started to whine high, like it was straining, and then it was pushing air that felt like it came out of a freezer. I turned it all the way to hot and all the way to full, and cold air blasted me in the face so hard my eyes watered. I killed the controls, shut everything off, and the air kept coming for a few seconds before it finally died down to nothing. When it stopped, the silence had weight. That was when I saw him for the third time. Same side of the road, same spot on the shoulder. By another ditch. That could not have been the same ditch, but looked like it. Same wet or frozen hair. Same eyes. This time, his mouth was not open as wide. His teeth were clenched like he was biting down on something that hurt. I do not know why I did it. Maybe it is worse that I did it after ignoring him twice. I hit the brakes, not hard enough to lock anything, but hard enough that the load pushed a little, and I felt the shove. The truck slowed. The whole world narrowed down to those headlight beams moving toward him, while everything else stayed black. I told myself I would just pull up enough to be able to see him in the mirror, to make sure he was really there and not a sign or a bag on a fence or something stupid making a fool out of me. That was the story I told myself, and then my foot kept easing down, and the truck came almost to a stop. I was maybe 40 yards short of him. That is all. A few seconds of walking. The cold did not feel like weather anymore. It felt like an idea pressed against my skin. The radio, which I had switched off, came back on by itself. Not to the voice of the host, but to that hiss again. Thick this time, like air whipping around inside a pipe. Under it there was a sound I still hear when I wake up in the wrong part of the night. It was like somebody trying to talk with their mouth full of ice. I reached over and slapped the volume knob all the way down, harder than I needed to, and that is when the inside of the windshield fogged from the center out in a perfect circle, like someone had leaned forward from where the passenger seat was and exhaled against the glass. I had no passenger. My breath was not doing that. Mine was making little puffs right in front of my face, normal size, fading quick. I said very quietly, "No." I do not know if I was saying no to the idea of getting out, or no to what was already in the cab. Another 3 knocks sounded, this time on the passenger door. Same rhythm as before, just a little sharper. Not desperate, not frantic, just there, like a delivery, like courtesy. I could see the hitchhiker now out the right side of the windshield. Not straight on, but at an angle. He had moved closer while I was trying to make my lungs work right. 1 second he was at that 40-yard mark in the lane of the beams. The next second he was 10 yards from the bumper, but I did not see the steps in between. I do not know how to explain that. There was no blur, no flash, just one frame of the world, and then another, like a bad video skipping. The static from the radio rose again, even with the volume down, like it was leaking around the knob. Not my last name, just Lane. Pulled thin and long, stretched until it almost broke, then snapped back. I am telling you, man, I swear to God that sound knew me. I killed the engine. I do not even remember making the decision. My hand was just suddenly on the key, turning it. The truck went from alive to dead in a way I have never heard before. No cooling ticks. No little fan continuing to spin. Just a cut. The only sound left after that was the wind hitting the side of the trailer, and a soft tapping underneath somewhere, like a loose strap tail flicking against metal. My headlights stayed on in that half minute after engine off when they run on battery. The man stood in them, swaying just a little. I could hear a faint knocking. Regular, not on the cab now, but from somewhere near him. His mouth was open again, wider than before. Jaw dropped down to a point that made my own jaw hurt to look at. There was no scream. There was only the sound of something pounding inside a box. That is the closest I can come. Like somebody locked in a trunk, hitting it with their fists in time, with their own panicked heartbeat. Except it did not sound muffled. It sounded like my ears were the box. Every bang landed right behind my forehead. He was not exhaling steam into the air like I was. The frost at his temples caught the light like little crystals. His eyes were open, but they did not shine. They looked like marbles that had been left out in a freezer. He raised his arm again, not to flag me down this time, but slow, bending at the elbow until his hand was pointing directly at the cab. At me. The knocking inside his open mouth got faster, as if whatever was in there had realized the time was short. I should have driven. I should have started the engine and gone, and not looked back and never looked at anything strange again. Instead, my body did a thing I still do not understand. I opened the door. The cold outside was worse. but it was honest. It smelled like dust and cedar and exhaust. It did not have that inside edge the cab air had picked up. My boots hit the pavement, and for a second I felt steady, like I had stepped back into a world that obeyed rules. The wind cut through my jeans. The sound of it in the scrub on the sides of the highway was normal. An 18-wheeler blasted past in the other lane at that moment, the roar shaking my truck and pushing at me, and I latched onto that noise like a lifeline. There, I told myself, there are other people. I walked toward the front of my truck, my breath coming out in cloud after cloud, my eyes watering from the cold. The man did not move. He stood just beyond the spill of my low beams now, right at the edge where dark begins again. His clothes did not flap in the wind. They hung straight down like they were still. I could hear that knocking clearly now that I was outside, and I realized in this terrible dropping moment that it was not coming from his chest like I first thought. It was coming from inside his mouth. Each pound echoed in there, hollow and awful, like his open jaw was the opening of some deep place, and whatever was far down in it was trying to punch its way up. He should not have been able to stand. His skin looked like it had that waxy cast you see on people in open caskets. His fingers were curled like claws, but not tense, just set that way. The tears on his face, if that is what they were, had little ridges in them, like they had frozen halfway down. I stopped about 15 feet away. Any closer, and I knew something in me would give way. I wanted to say, "Do you need help?" or ask where his car was, or say anything that would make this scene sound like something that could still be normal. What came out of my mouth was, "When did you get out here?" And my voice cracked right in the middle, like a teenager. His lips twitched at the sound, not up or down, not into a smile or a frown, just a little sideways jerk, like a puppet whose string had caught. Then the knocking inside his mouth matched my heartbeat. I know that sounds crazy, but I promise you it did. I felt my pulse in my neck and in my wrists, and each strike from that unseen fist hit at the same time. It was like my body was the drum somebody was testing. Behind him, out in the dark past the edge of the ditch, I could see a darker strip that might have been a road or a driveway or nothing at all. I could not make my eyes focus on it. The wind picked up and a few bits of gravel skittered over the shoulder between us. He did not react. The static from my cab radio, which should have been silent with the key off, rolled out through the open driver door behind me, faint but crawling, like someone whispering his lines into an actor's ear. It was saying something now, just under the hiss. "Come." My legs started to shake, not with cold, but with that sick, terrified energy you get right before you throw up. I took one more step forward without meaning to, and his eyes finally moved. They did not move the way eyes move when somebody looks at you. They snapped into place, like they had been waiting for my face to hit a particular angle. When our gazes met, every little story I had ever told myself about the world being solid and predictable fell away in a single breath. There was no recognition in him. There was no plea. There was only this flat kind of knowledge, like he knew exactly how far I would go, and exactly where I would stop. The knocking inside his mouth stopped on the next beat. The sudden silence was louder than any of the noise before it. My ears rang with it. In that ring I heard another sound, very faint, coming from behind me, from the cab. It was the sound of somebody moving around in the sleeper, careful, trying not to bump into anything, a shoe scuff. I knew, absolutely knew, that if I turned around and looked into that dark rectangle of the open door, I would see someone sitting on my bunk, legs hanging off, head tilted just a little too far to one side. Or I would see myself, or I would see nothing, and each of those felt worse than the last. I do not know how long I stood there, caught between those two places, the frozen man in front of me and the unseen thing behind me. My breath came fast. The air burned going in. My fingers hurt. The only thing that broke that deadlock was a car horn way up the road, somebody giving a little tap as they went by, like they were saying, "What are you two doing out here?" It snapped the world just enough. I stepped backward, then another step, not turning my back on him. There was no change in his face. The frost did not melt. The tears did not move. The longer I looked at him, the more wrong his shape seemed. Not because of anything big, like extra limbs or anything like that. Only little things. The angle of his shoulders against his neck, the way his knees seemed set a tiny bit too close together, like whoever put him together had seen a person once and was doing it from memory. I kept stepping backward until I could reach the grab handle on the cab without looking. The whole time I thought, do not run. Because I had this feeling that if I broke and turned and ran, he would finally cross that last bit of pavement, and I would feel a hand I could not describe close on the back of my neck. When my fingers closed on the handle, the static from the radio cut out mid-hiss, like somebody had pulled a plug. The knocking did not start again. The sounds from the sleeper stopped. The only thing I could hear was the wind and my own breathing. I dragged myself up into the seat, one leg at a time, never letting my eyes leave that spot in the headlights. Until I had to, until the angle forced me to lose sight of him for a second while I swung in. My heart felt like it was going to tear something loose. I slammed the door, locked it. Not that a little button was going to mean anything if whatever this was wanted in, but my hands needed to do it. I fumbled the key twice before it went into the ignition. When the engine turned over, the relief hurt. The lights brightened. The heater came back to life, blasting hot air like it was trying to make up for all the cold. I did not look at any of the gauges. I just slammed the truck into gear and rolled. As I pulled away, the beam swung off him. It was just his face, reflected in the glass at an angle that should not have caught it. His mouth was closed now. His eyes were still on that same fixed point in space ahead of him, but there was a tiny vibration in his jaw. Like someone inside had started knocking again, and this time it was not getting out. I drove. I did not speed. I did not trust myself not to wreck if I went any faster. The sign for Marble Falls came up sooner than I expected, like the road had shortened on that side. At the same time, according to the clock, I was late. Way late. My log showed a gap in my speed and position that I cannot explain. It is like I crawled along for longer than I did, or like the truck sat still on the side of the highway without me in it, and then woke back up. I do not know. The plant guard at the gate gave me a look when I pulled in. He said, "You take a nap out there, or what?" With a little laugh, and the hair on my arms stood up so fast it hurt. There was a line of trucks behind me that I did not remember passing. My hand signed my name while the rest of me sat 3 feet away and watched like it was somebody else. Nobody said I looked pale. Nobody asked me if I was okay. I do not think I would have told them the truth if they had. On the way back north, I made dispatch reroute me on some excuse about construction so I could take another highway, one that added time, one with more lights and more towns. They grumbled in my ear, but they did it. I made it home after sunrise. My wife asked me why my lips were cracked like I had been in the cold all night without a cab, why the coffee in my thermos was still almost full when I usually drink it all, why the burrito was still in the cooler untouched. I threw the burrito straight into the trash, with the wrapper still tight around it. That was weeks ago, and it is why I am out here behind the trailer now, freezing with my back to the wall like some kid hiding from monsters, telling this into a phone like one of those late-night call-in stories. Only I know mine is real. I have the proof in ways nobody else would care about. My rig, the one I drove that night, still smells like cold when you first open it, even on warm days. There is a little spot on the inside of the windshield, right above where the passenger would breathe, that fogs up in a perfect circle when the engine is off. They say it is just a quirk in the glass. The radio, when you tune it to that same talk station on that stretch between Johnson City and Marble Falls, hisses for a beat and then comes in clear, but there is this notch of silence always in the same place in the host's intro, like somebody edited a word out. If you listen close, In that notch, there is a sound like a single knock. I avoid that road now. I tell dispatch I will take any other run, any other direction. I would rather fight city traffic all night than see those dark miles again. When I have to drive toward Johnson City in my pickup for personal reasons, I keep my eyes straight ahead and my hands damp on the wheel, and I never, ever look hard at the shoulders where the gravel is scuffed. The worst part is not that I am scared of seeing him again. Just once. 3 beats, always the same. I open the curtain every time. There is never anybody there. The blankets are smooth. The little shelf is empty. The only thing that has changed is me. I do not pick up hitchhikers now. On any road. Not even in summer. I cannot stand to see somebody standing on the shoulder because my brain fills in frost on their hair and frozen lines on their cheeks whether they are there or not. When the temperature app on my phone flashes 32, my chest tightens. I cannot drink my coffee if I can see my breath. I turn the heater up until my wife complains and I still cannot get warm. I know what you are thinking. You are thinking I was tired, or that my mind played tricks on me, or that some poor man really did freeze to death out there and my guilt turned him into something else in my head. Maybe I want to believe one of those too. All I can tell you is what I heard and saw and what has not stopped since. I am not asking anyone to fix it. There is nothing to fix. It is not a problem. It is a condition. It is like picking up a passenger you can never drop off. Whatever was hitting the inside of that man's mouth, whatever was pounding and pounding in there trying to get out, I do not think it was meant for him in the first place. I think it was looking for a ride. I did not open my door for him until the 3rd time, but that does not matter. Now when I close my eyes in the little bedroom in this trailer, when the world finally goes quiet and the last truck for the night has passed out on the highway, I can feel a pressure just behind my teeth, mild but steady, like someone knocking on the inside of my own mouth, asking how much farther it is to wherever I am going.